just after midnight. Tom Calvert was in Dublin for work, wearing a nice suit and a gold watch that showed he had money. He sat there looking unhappy, even though he tried to smile. The bartender walked over and said, "Last call. We close in 25 minutes." Tom nodded and faked a smile. The bartender then asked, "What's bothering you?" Tom looked at the bartender's name tag that read Patrick and chuckled. The classic Irish name, Patrick. Nothing much, just feeling like my life is a waste. Patrick raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Tom replied, "Just what I said. My whole life feels wasted." Patrick examined him. "You look very well off. I doubt your life is wasted." Tom explained, "I run a clothing business for my father-in-law, but I feel like my life is wasted." Patrick said, "Regret is costly. I know 3 things. First, I'm a great bartender, and that makes me a good listener. Second, you're wealthy, so I bet you tip well. And third, you're the last customer here, so we have time to hear your story." Tom found himself smiling. Patrick seemed easy to talk to. Tom said, "People think being rich is everything. But let me tell you, I've traveled a hard path. I hurt someone I shouldn't have. I'm married to someone who's broken my heart. I feel stuck in a marriage that doesn't work. I have 2 sons I barely know. I find comfort in flings, but I would give it all up in a heartbeat if I could." Patrick nodded. "So you've got money and flings. That's typical for someone rich." Tom admitted, "I guess so. I had someone stay with me for just 1 night recently. She was incredibly attractive." He shook his head. "But it's not worth it." Patrick responded, "Let's go back. You said you'd trade all of this, and it sounds like it began when you hurt someone you shouldn't have." Tom nodded. "Her name was Allie. A year ago, her husband hurt her badly. When he did, she fell and got seriously injured. I feel responsible for that, too." Patrick shook his head. "If you didn't do the hurting, then you didn't cause her tragedy." Tom replied, "But I feel it was my fault. Around that time, I saw her at the store and we began talking. We decided to meet up for tea at the mall. I apologized for how I treated her years ago. She smiled, but what she said next shocked me. It still hurts her now, many years later. When I chose not to believe her and went with my current wife, she told me, 'Here comes the regret. I was the only man she ever really loved.' She was deeply in love with me and planned to give herself to me right after prom the following week. She was prepared and wanted to share an intimate moment in a hotel room. She had it all arranged. We had been together for 3 years. Her parents knew about us, and even helped by booking a room for us at Motel 6. Patrick nodded and said, "There is more to this story I can share." Tom replied, "After that last part, a huge guy appeared behind us. I didn't know it then, but he was her husband who was not kind to her. After I finished speaking, this big man said in a threatening voice, 'Allie, you need to come home.' She turned pale, nodded, and walked away without saying anything. She passed away that night. I learned from the reunion committee a month ago." Patrick winced. Tom shook his head. "I feel like I ruined 2 lives." Patrick responded, "You didn't force her." Tom said, "That's true, but she ended up marrying that man right after graduation. If we had stayed together a little longer, even if we didn't marry, she might not have jumped into that relationship. She endured many years of his poor treatment. If we hadn't ended things, she would have gone to Martin's University on a full art scholarship, and her life would have been so different. It's all my fault." Patrick said, "Hold on, start from the beginning. I still don't think it's your fault." Tom reflected back. Monday, April 24th, 2017. Tom got to school and looked for his girlfriend, Allie. Brittany, the head cheerleader, was at his locker. She looked at him kindly and said, "I'm sorry to say this, but Allie is in D Hall. She's with my ex, Chad." Tom quickly walked to D Hall and saw Allie with Chad. He witnessed them sharing a kiss as he approached. Allie jumped when she saw him, and Tom felt betrayed. His heart sank. His girlfriend wasn't just talking to someone, she was with Chad, someone he didn't like. He glared at Allie, then stormed off, saying, "I can't believe this." Allie ran after him, calling, "It's not what it seems, Tom! Tom!" Allie fell to the floor in tears as Tom continued to walk away. Tom returned to his locker, where Brittany was waiting. She said, "I told you. I'm sorry, but I thought you should know that my ex-boyfriend was with your girlfriend. By the way, prom is coming up and I'm not with Chad anymore. I'm free now. Tom looked at the attractive Brittany and asked, Really? Brittany nodded with a smile. Tom felt broken but also amazed that this lovely young woman wanted to go to prom with him. He nodded excitedly. For a man with a broken heart, he sure bounced back quickly. Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. Before class that morning, Allie approached Tom and said, Tom, please listen. Chad came up to me and asked about art class. We talked for a moment, then he kissed me. I didn't kiss back. He just took it upon himself to kiss me. I didn't agree to that. Tom looked into her eyes and saw she was sincere, but he couldn't believe her story. He replied, Wow, you're really good at lying. I don't want to see you again. Tom walked away and Allie slumped down, feeling her heart break again. Saturday, April 29th, 2017. Brittany called Tom's phone that morning at 9. Tom, hey, my dad wants to meet you. I told him all about you and that you are taking me to prom. Tom sighed. Really? Already? Brittany was excited. Yes, he can't wait. Tom sighed again. Okay. I guess since we're going to prom together. Brittany added, Great, dress nicely. Daddy doesn't like sloppy looks. The address is 16 Windsor Court. Tom put on his khakis and the red shirt he wore for his part-time job. It was the best he could do on such short notice. It was a warm spring day, already in the low 70s with bright sunshine. Tom entered the address into his phone and saw it was at the far north end where the big houses were. His family lived in a small house that his father had inherited before the town became fancy. He felt nervous when he reached the entrance to Windsor Court and saw a guard at the gate. As he approached, he said, I'm Tom Calvert. I'm here to see Mr. Randolph. The guard nodded and pressed the button to let him in. Tom felt out of place as he drove past large mansions, each with many garages. When he arrived at Brittany's house, she was waiting at the door with a bright smile. As he stepped out of his car, Brittany greeted him with a quick kiss and said, Better get used to those. Brittany led him through the front door, past several living rooms, to one at the back that opened to an impressive pool and patio. There was a pool house that was almost as large as his own home. Brittany smiled as she walked to the table and introduced him to a man in his 40s. Tom thought her father was quite handsome. Next to him was a woman who appeared graceful, looking younger than her age after some work done. Brittany smiled and said, Daddy, Mom, this is Tom, my date for prom. Her father looked him over, then his expression softened into a smile. Tom said, Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Randolph. The man replied, Just call me Jim and this is my wife Helen. I really dislike being called Mr. anything. Tom said, Okay, Jim. Jim smiled and said, Relax. Brittany likes you, so I like you too, at least for now. I appreciate most people she likes except Chad. He reminds me of that character Eddie from Leave It to Beaver. He seems slick, but isn't as clever as he thinks. I'll be straightforward. What is your class rank? My daughter says you are very smart and hardworking. Tom replied, 8. Jim nodded. Great. Number 8 out of more than 1,200. You are just as smart as my daughter says. Please, have a seat. What does your dad do? Tom said, He drives a truck. Jim nodded with a smile. Honest work for an honest person. I appreciate that. McGovern's Trucking is a good company. Tom replied, I didn't say where he worked. Jim added, I need to be careful about who dates my daughter. Tom asked, So you had me checked out? Am I approved? My family isn't wealthy. Jim smiled and said, Yes, you are impressive in many ways. I don't want my daughter dating someone like Chad. That was an unfortunate choice that seems to be corrected now. Tom sat next to Brittany and a maid came out asking, What would you like to drink, sir? Tom took a moment to realize she was speaking to him and said, Iced tea is fine. After some light conversation, Jim asked, So, where are you planning to go to college? Tom said, Probably IU. Jim inquired, Did you apply to Notre Dame? Tom replied, My dream school. I was accepted, but they didn't offer me enough scholarships. I'm a decent football player, just enough to play part-time in school, but not at Notre Dame level. I also got into Martin's, but they didn't offer enough money either. Jim nodded. It was decision time. He wanted to help. He took out his phone and made a call. Harold, Jim Randolph here. Yes, I know it's Saturday. Listen, you want that building and I'm willing to pay for it, but there's a condition. You accepted a young man named Tom Calvert from Carmel, Indiana, and you didn't offer him enough scholarship to attend. You'll fix that. Full ride, including books." There was a pause on the line. Jim added, "I don't care what the usual rules are. Just do it. He has already told me your school is his dream. So as long as it doesn't cost him anything, he accepts, right?" Jim looked at Tom, who was shocked and could only nod. Jim said, "Great. Just remember the building is to be named after my grandfather." Jim relaxed in his chair, satisfied. "Problem solved. My daughter will have her college boyfriend." Tom was puzzled, thinking, boyfriend? Brittany then hugged her father affectionately before giving Tom a quick kiss. Jim didn't seem bothered by Brittany showing her affection openly. Tom said, thank you." Jim smiled and replied, "It makes my daughter happy. I can see why she admires you. You're bright, attractive, and focused. You don't place in the top 1% of your class by being lazy." Friday, May 5th, 2017. Tom arrived at Brittany's house in a fancy car that someone else had rented for him. He wore a tuxedo that Jim Randolph had bought and fitted for him. When he rang the doorbell, Jim opened the door and greeted him with a cheerful, "Welcome." Tom stepped inside. Jim said, "My daughter and her stylists are finishing her hair and makeup. Please, have a seat." Tom sat down as Jim stood in front of him and handed him a hotel room key. Tom looked at the key, surprised, and asked, "Sir?" Jim sighed and replied, "Come on. We both know you'll be spending time with my daughter after the prom. I'm not naive. I want you to be somewhere comfortable." Tom was momentarily speechless. Jim continued, "You two are young and attractive. It's natural for young people to want to be together." Tom didn't know what to say. Jim went on, "Just so you know, she has experience. Chad was her first boyfriend, but she insists on being with someone she cares about. I've talked to her about being careful and how having too many partners can complicate things in the future." Tom said, "Okay, so the room is for tonight and tomorrow. Please have her back by 1 in the afternoon on Sunday, and remember to respect her. First, being with someone means taking care of her feelings. Second, she should agree to anything you want to do together. And third, being a good man is important. She's safe and ready, so enjoy your time together." There was a hint of caution in his words, but Tom had no intention of causing any harm. Brittany came down the stairs in a dress that was quite eye-catching. It fit her well, showing off her style, and she looked beautiful. Tom said, "You look amazing." His compliment was heartfelt, and Brittany smiled brightly. Jim appreciated Tom's honesty as well. The fancy car took them to prom. Tom felt relieved that Allie wasn't there. It seemed strange to him that they were officially together, yet he had never formally asked. They just were. Chad attended the event with Madison. Brittany was different from what he expected. She wasn't interested in the after-prom party. She just wanted to dance with him and gazed at him with admiration as they moved to the music. When Chad tried to join in, Brittany shot him a cold look and said, "Not happening." Brittany enjoyed slow dancing and shared sweet kisses with him. Her smiles were genuine, showing that she truly wanted to be with him. Around 10, Brittany said, "My dad gave you a room key, right?" Tom was taken aback that she knew. Brittany rolled her eyes playfully and said, "Of course. I'm open with my parents. They understand. I told them I wanted tonight and tomorrow. We have already checked into our room in the honeymoon suite." Tom and Brittany headed downtown to the Upper Windsor Hotel in Indianapolis, looking forward to a memorable evening. They took the elevator up to the 10th floor and entered room 1001. Tom was amazed at the space, a luxurious living area connected to an elegant bedroom with a large bed. As they settled in, Brittany playfully asked Tom to help her with her dress zipper. Smiling, he unzipped the back of her dress, which she let slip off her shoulders before she stepped away. They shared a close embrace, both feeling excitement and affection for each other. After a moment together, Brittany led Tom to the bed, and they enjoyed a warm, quiet connection, both feeling at ease and happy in each other's company. With soft laughter and gentle words, they made the evening one to remember, simply enjoying being together in a peaceful moment. Later, as they rested, Brittany and Tom reflected on the evening, grateful for the calm and closeness they'd shared. It was a night of joy, leaving both feeling relaxed and connected, looking forward to more moments like these. Brittany was teaching him in a way that made him feel comfortable. After a little while, she encouraged him gently. She guided his head up and smiled. He positioned himself over her, and she helped him find the right spot. He eased in a little, and she guided him, helping him adjust. He was surprised by how it felt. She smiled at him without making fun of him. He moved gently, feeling excited. Since he had just finished a short time ago, he could keep going for a bit longer, but soon she began to breathe heavier. He pushed a bit harder, and then felt himself relax. She laughed lightly and said, "That was wonderful." He got off as she took a cloth to keep things tidy. After cleaning up, she changed the sheets and laid down beside him, resting her head on his chest. She whispered, "That was magical," with a happy sigh. They laid there for a while. Brittany shared how much she enjoyed the night and how he was a great boyfriend. She said, "I loved how sweet you were. Some past boyfriends didn't let me have my turn. Just know you are already amazing at this, and we have only been together once." They shared soft kisses and talked openly. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Brittany gave him a playful look and walked to the door without any clothes on. A porter brought in 2 bags. One was his and the other was hers. Brittany casually went to her purse, took out some money, and handed it to the surprised porter. After he left, Brittany laughed as she walked back to the bed and said, "That was funny. Anyway, I have clothes for tomorrow. My dad set us up for a fun day. We have tickets for a concert tomorrow night. We can check out downtown together. We have lunch reservations too." As they chatted, she playfully touched him, and before long he was feeling excited again. With a smile, she joined him, and they shared another moment together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. "That was great. You are such a wonderful partner," she said happily. After a while, she got ready for bed, and they cuddled together. She quickly fell asleep with a smile on her face. The next day, the limo took them back to her house. Tom noticed that his car had been cleaned and looked nice. Tom felt a bit unsure about how her parents would feel after spending a fun weekend with their daughter. When they walked in, only Jim was home. Jim looked a bit unsure until Brittany jumped into his arms and said, "Daddy, it was amazing. He's kind, thoughtful, and fun." Her voice lowered. "He always lets me go first." Jim smiled at Tom and nodded. "I knew you were a good guy. Thanks for making my little girl so happy." Brittany then asked, "Where's Mom?" Jim replied a little sharply, "In Paris." Brittany dropped the subject. Tom returned to the moment and said, "Strange, right?" Patrick nodded. "Her parents set this up for you two?" Tom agreed with a nod. Patrick went to the front door, locked it, turned the closed sign, and pulled down the shades. Tom started to get up, but Patrick said, "Wait, what happened next?" Tom replied, "Well, we fell in love quickly. We got married in August, just before college started. Brittany wasn't like many girls. She didn't want a big wedding. It was big by my standards with 200 guests, but for a rich girl, not really. We held it in a small room at the country club her dad belonged to. The student housing at Notre Dame turned out to be married student housing." Friday, August 25th, 2017. Brittany excitedly inserted the key into the lock and opened the door. She stepped into their 3-room apartment and danced around, shouting, "Ours, ours, ours!" She ran up to him and gave him a kiss. Brittany was perfectly fine living in that simple student apartment. On the first day of class, he went to the business building while she headed to the art building. When they both came home that evening, Brittany said, "Sit down because I need to share a few things. First, starting next week, I'll be modeling for my drawing classes. Secondly, I'll be taking part in some art museum events which are different. To keep things clear, we will both be attending." Tom asked, "Modeling means you'll be undressing, right?" Brittany nodded. Tom questioned, "Only in the classroom, right?" Brittany replied, "Not really. You'll have to manage me being alone during class time, but I insisted you be my chaperone for private sessions and museum events." Tom responded, "And if I don't like it?" Brittany said, "Tom, the classroom is just that. It's a classroom with other students present, for the other events. You'll be there to support me." Tom sighed and nodded. Monday, August 28th, 2017. Tom entered the art building looking for room 108. It was almost 8 o'clock, and he didn't have a class at that hour. He walked in just behind another student. Brittany was there in a robe. She noticed him and rolled her eyes before walking over and saying, "See? Classroom, easels, drawing pads, students, and a teacher?" Tom sighed, and Brittany added, "You're feeling insecure. I hope you can let this go and not cause a scene. I am only yours. Honestly, I am looking forward to posing. I will be by myself, okay?" She stood in front of him with her arms by her sides and said, "If we are good, just take off my robe." Tom sighed, undid the tie, and gently took the robe off his wife. She gave him a soft kiss on the lips, turned around and walked to the stage, waiting to hear what to do next. Tom silently said, "Sorry," to his wife. She smiled back and whispered, "Love you." Tom left feeling a bit better, but also somewhat foolish. Friday, September 15th, 2017. They arrived at the Branson Art Museum at 6 that evening. Brittany was wearing a robe again. Tom was in khakis and a polo shirt. A man approached Brittany and greeted her with a dramatic kiss on the cheek. He said, "Brittany, good to see you. Please take off the robe and join us." Tom immediately disliked the man. Brittany introduced him. "That is Jean Renier. He is the dean of the art school, the director of this museum, and a well-known art expert." Brittany removed her robe and handed it to Tom. She pointed to some hooks nearby and said, "Robe goes here. I am art tonight. I am walking art." Tom said, "Seems like an excuse for attention." An undressed man walked past and Tom felt uncomfortable. Seeing that was not on his list of things to enjoy. Brittany shook her head and said, "He is a professional. He helps run this museum." At 6:30, they gathered for a speech. Jean Renier stood at the podium and said, "Welcome to the Walking Art event. We have many beautiful people showcasing their bodies within our collection. Feel free to explore and enjoy both the walking and displayed art." Most of the night was spent wandering around. Many people complimented Brittany as they moved through the exhibits. The event was set to end at 10 o'clock. At 9:45, Jean Renier approached Tom and Brittany and said, "Thank you for being a part of tonight. It may seem unusual to those outside the art world, but tonight was a huge success." Tom felt Renier was mocking him, but there wasn't much he could do. Renier hadn't crossed any lines, and Brittany had stayed with him all night. As they walked out, Tom said, "He seems untrustworthy. Be careful around him." Brittany replied, "I know. He is clever and tricky. I will keep my distance." Patrick asked, "So you warned her about him?" Tom nodded and said, "The issue is he had plenty of time. She did a lot of modeling, and I was there for the first 4 years of her events. But then she stayed in school for her master's while I started working for her dad. It took 7 years, but he got what he wanted in the end." Patrick said, "But you know, for those 7 years, she was completely faithful. I wouldn't call that time wasted." "You said she loved you and you loved her. Yes, she's not thinking clearly, but you did have almost 7 good years together." Tom nodded but replied, "It was based on a lie." Patrick asked, "What do you mean?" Tom answered, "Now this is the end of my marriage to Brittany." Monday, October 14th, 2024. Tom arrived home to find Brittany sitting on the couch. There was something different about her eyes. Tom looked at her and asked, "What's wrong?" Brittany sighed and said, "Tom, we need to talk." Patrick interrupted, saying, "Uh-oh." Tom nodded. Yes, uh-oh is right. Tom looked at his wife and knew from his business experience that he should stay quiet and listen. Sometimes someone shares too much information. Brittany said, "You need to hear me out. This isn't up for discussion. I've made my decision, and this is how it will be." Tom felt uneasy, knowing this would be a big change that he wouldn't like. Brittany continued, "There's an art show in Las Vegas next weekend, and I'm going," Tom remarked. "You said I, not we." Brittany nodded and said, "I'm going with Jean Renier." Tom responded, "And by with, you mean in the same hotel room?" Brittany confirmed, "I've only been with 2 men, and I feel the need to have more experiences. I love you, but this is just a casual encounter. He's charming, well-connected in my art world, and a well-known expert." Tom realized that "hate it" didn't even begin to cover what he was feeling. Tom said, "First, this is cheating. Second, it's still cheating. And third, cheating leads to divorce." Brittany insisted, "It's not cheating. It's just a casual encounter. I still love you, but I want to take a lover. Tom replied, any relationship outside our marriage is cheating unless both agree, and I certainly do not agree. Brittany stated, I'm telling you in advance, so it's not cheating. I've been faithful for 7 years, and I want to explore more of life. Tom looked at her in disbelief and said, this is really unbelievable. Brittany said, now that this is settled, I need to make a list to pack. She left the room, ignoring Tom as he called after her, this is not settled. Later that afternoon, Tom's father-in-law, Jim, came over and said, I hear you had a fight with my daughter about her lover. You will not be divorcing her. Tom responded, oh, I will. Jim insisted, no, you won't. Tom asked, how do you know that? Jim explained, I receive reports about my wife and daughter every day. I've been reading them closely for 2 months. I got a warning that things were getting bad for a while. Anyway, you will not be divorcing her. Tom retorted, I know you'll fire me. Jim shot back, oh, it's much more than that. Tom inquired, are you making threats? Jim clarified, they are promises. This is bigger than me. The board is made up of people much wealthier than I am, and they are all connected to the same powerful elite that controls the world. They will take you down, and I cannot stop them. You are far too valuable to them. Your potential is too great. Call it a fancy prison. Tom asked, how long have you known? Jim replied, I got some troubling news about 2 months ago. It's my wife's negative influence, no doubt. I think Rainier finally talked her around a month ago based on my reports. I keep an eye on both my wife and daughter. Brittany is tougher than my wife. She gave me a similar unkind speech after just 2.5 years. I haven't talked to her since. She was at the house the day I met you for only about 3 hours to say hello and then left. I stopped following her reports because it stresses me out. Tom said, I will not be fooled. Jim replied, of course not. Don't be silly. Remember the fashion show last week when you met Jessica, Jenny, and Julie? I made you go because they were there for you. Tom asked, what? Jim explained, I could see trouble coming 2 months ago with the first report and made plans for you when I learned Brittany wanted to bring someone else into the picture. Tom said, she might have already met someone. Jim shook his head. Nope. She's holding off until the trip. I have good information on that. She wants to tell you first. Tom said, so you want me to replace my daughter with someone else to keep me in line? Jim said, essentially, yes, but none of these girls has had more than 3 partners, so I'm not sure random girl is fair. Julie, who is 21, has 3. Jenny, who is 20, has 2, and Jessica, who is 19, has 2. All but one were in relationships. Julie had a brief encounter with a football player. If you try to leave, they could make things very difficult for you. Your skills are too valuable. By the time you're 30, you'll be on many boards of directors. Jim continued, pick one. Being alone and unhappy, or being with someone who truly finds you attractive. You're good-looking and wealthy. That's hard to resist. All 3 girls like you. I sense you like Jessica the most, since you talk to her the most. They'd all want to be your first partner. Jim sighed a little and said, I'll let you think it over. I know I've added more to your full plate. Thursday, October 24th, 2024. Brittany turned over in bed and said, just one more? She reached for him playfully. Patrick interrupted and asked, you said no, right? Tom replied, not at all. I was with her. Twice. That was the last time I was close to her. Patrick asked, so what happened next? Friday, October 25th, 2024. Tom woke up early while Brittany was getting ready for her trip. Tom had taken the day off work to try to convince Brittany not to leave. He told his boss it was for personal reasons. Tom said, this is wrong and we will get a divorce. Brittany replied, it's just something physical and I still love you. I'll see you in 2 weeks to plan for the holidays. They went back and forth about the same things many times until Brittany stood up and grabbed her bag. Tom said, this is your last chance, Brittany. Brittany answered, you won't divorce me. You're mine forever. I wanted you and I got you. I planned it that way from the start. Brittany hesitated and Tom noticed. Tom asked, you planned it from the start? Brittany sighed and said, well, you should know. After I broke up with Chad, I wanted you. I even paid him to kiss Allie and she had no idea. Tom had to catch his breath. Allie had been truthful that day. Everything had been a setup, and it shattered Tom's world. Tom said, "You never really loved me." Brittany shook her head. "I loved you the day you said yes to the prom. That weekend in the hotel, I was totally in love with you. I still love you, but I just need more now. I will love you forever. I just need more." Brittany asked, "Can I have a goodbye kiss?" Tom looked at her in disbelief and then shook his head. His whole life had been based on a lie. Allie was innocent, and he hurt her, leading to regret that weighed heavily on him. Brittany shrugged and walked out the door, getting into a limousine. An hour later, Tom's mind filled with awful thoughts about what she might be doing with Rainier. It consumed him all day, making him wonder if she had changed her mind. At 6:09 in the evening, Tom received a text from his father-in-law, Jim. "I'm sure you're having the same worries I had when my wife cheated on me. You're probably wondering if she went through with it and when. It ate me up inside for a year because I was alone. I know you don't want my help, but I'll support you as best as I can. I have updates from their trip that will help ease your mind, though the feeling of betrayal will linger. The limo picked them up this morning at 9:09 a.m. They quickly started kissing. There were some close moments in the limo. The private jet took off at 10:26 a.m. They were close at 10:45 a.m. He doesn't have anything special. They were together 4 times on the plane. She had 3 good experiences, but they weren't amazing, just a bit different since he relates more to her art. You don't owe my daughter anything now. Let me say it again. You owe Brittany nothing." At 6:30, the doorbell rang. Jessica showed up with a McDonald's bag, 2 large vanilla milkshakes, and a bright smile. Patrick said, "So, you stood your ground?" Tom shook his head and replied, "No, Jessica and I were together for 6 years. I cared for her but couldn't give her the marriage and family she wanted. We were really just best friends until she decided we needed to end things so she could look for a husband to start a family. She met someone 3 months later and got married a year after that. I let her go. She did the right thing by breaking up with me before dating again. Her husband is a nice guy and a plumber. When he wanted to start his own business, I helped him get the tools he needed at a very low price. He's doing really well now and taking care of his family. I've kept an eye on them. He once had too much to drink at a plumbing convention. A woman showed interest in him, but I had some friends nearby to make sure everything stayed okay. I like to think of myself as a protector of their marriage." Patrick looked surprised and asked, "You helped save their marriage?" Tom nodded. "It felt right to do that, and I still help out at those conventions. He has stopped drinking so much since then. He realized he almost messed things up. I never got close to Brittany again, and she was fine with it. She quickly fell for Gene like she did for me and stayed with him for 5 years before moving on to someone else. It was funny, though. When she decided to go after other men, she went all in. On one trip with Rainier, he had an art show where things got a little out of hand. Brittany was secretly meeting her mom and went to a male review where they both had quite the wild time. I was getting reports from my father-in-law about all of this. After Jessica, I was with Emma, then Kendra, then Ala. My last girlfriend until last month was Juanita. I also had a lot of short flings with models. It all feels empty, honestly. I would give it all up in a heartbeat for just one loyal partner who truly loved me. Emma was the daughter of one of the board members. We dated for 3 months, and she had my twin boys 9 months after we broke up. I only figured it out after I learned about my sons. It felt like I was just used for my genes. I didn't even know they existed for 5 years. They were kept away from me all that time." Patrick took a step back and said, "Wow! Why didn't they just ask you to have a child with Brittany?" Tom replied, "It turns out she can't have kids." He finished his drink, opened his wallet, pulled out some money, and said, "Here's all I have. It's more than 1,000. If you feel it's too much, please donate it to a church to help people in need. Thank you for listening. Now you see how deep regret can run. I wish I could go back to that day I remember so clearly, Monday, April 24th, 2017. If only I could go to school a minute earlier and fix things." Patrick asked, "Do you really want that?" Tom said, "Yes. I changed 2 lives for the worse. If I could take what I know now back in time, I would take Allie to prom, fix my mistakes, visit Martin's with her, and stay close to my parents. I would love and care for Allie with all my heart forever." Patrick responded, Wishes should be granted as they are meant to be. I see a good heart in you, remember." He looked Tom in the eyes. Some mistakes are part of the journey. For a moment, Tom felt the effects of his drink and his vision was blurry. On Monday, April 24th, 2017, Tom woke up to his alarm, feeling confused. He was back in his parents' house in his old room. The end of a song was playing on the radio. The DJ said, "This is Worm, the big worm. Today will be a sunny April 24th, so go out and enjoy it." Tom thought, "Where's Patrick? That was just a moment ago. Wait, it's March, not April. What is happening?" His mom came in and said, "You better hurry." Tom looked around and noticed he was in his childhood room. He glanced at his hand. His skin looked younger than he remembered. He got up and headed to the bathroom. His 18-year-old face stared back at him. He couldn't believe it. It was 2017, and he was back at his parents' house. Was his life with Brittany just a dream? Tom chose not to think about it. He was in a hurry. He dashed out of the house shouting, "Can't eat, Mom, bye!" He hurried to school, taking one hallway to reach another just in time to see Brittany talking to Chad, who seemed to take some money before heading down the hall. Tom ran a longer way just to see what was really happening from a different angle. He heard Chad chatting with Allie. She didn't look interested. Chad leaned in to kiss her and Allie pushed him away, but he pulled her back. Tom rushed up behind Chad and shouted, "That's my girl!" He shoved Chad aside and gave him a push to the shoulder. Chad stumbled back, but didn't retaliate. Allie defended herself. "He just grabbed me. I didn't kiss back. Tom quickly lifted Allie into his arms and said, "I believe you. I believe you. I care about you, Allie. I believe you." The weight of his guilt lifted away like morning fog under the sun. Allie kissed him gently, then rested her head on his chest and said, "Tom, I love you too." In his arms, Allie felt just right, and he kissed her again. She melted against him. Tom thought, "She kisses so differently than Brittany and others. Wait, what?" He wondered what was happening and decided that having Allie in his arms was everything he had ever wanted. Epilogue. Brittany went to prom with Brock Peterson. Tom disliked Brock but realized he fit the scene he was about to join. They married that summer because her father wanted it. They started fighting and being unfaithful within a year. As for Tom and Allie. Tom looked at Allie, who was staring at him with concern. She asked, "Are you okay?" Tom twirled her in his arms. The girl he held loved him, and he loved her. Tom smiled. "I am better than okay. I want to love you for the rest of my life." Allie jumped with excitement. "Yes, yes, yes!" A small crowd gathered around them after Allie's joyful shout. Brittany happened to walk by and sighed as she noticed them, giving them a quick frown before walking away. Allie took Tom's words about forever as a proposal, even without a ring. It was sooner than he planned, but deep down he wanted her as his wife. He might not know what to do next, but he was sure about what not to do. Backing away now would hurt Allie, and he promised himself to never hurt her. A strange thought crossed his mind. In another time, Allie was sad, but here she was filled with joy. Allie called her mom. "Mom! Tom just asked me to marry him, and I said yes." Tom heard a delighted scream from the other end. After a moment, Allie glanced at her phone and said, "Friday. I want to be your wife as soon as possible. We just need to get the license this afternoon after school, and we can get married Friday after school." Tom looked into Allie's eyes, seeing her hope and determination. He agreed. "Let's make it happen. We can stop at Walmart afterward for a ring." Allie smiled at him and said, "I love you, Tom." Tom called his parents, who were supportive but a bit cautious. They could see he was serious. They liked Allie and backed his choice. Allie looked at him and said, "Can we go to Martin's University? It's my dream, and you were accepted." Tom replied, "I know." He felt nervous because he didn't know how to pay for it, and the loans would be huge. She was gentle and kind, but had him completely under her charm, which made him feel strong. Allie squealed with joy. "Oh, Tom, I am the happiest woman in the world right now." The happiness in her eyes warmed his heart. After school, both sets of parents met them at the courthouse with the important documents. Tom's mother, Anne, and Allie's mom, Sandra, were both emotional as they entered the building together. Tom's father, Hank, and Allie's father, Chuck, patted him on the back and told him that, although they were probably young, Allie was a wonderful choice, and they made a great couple who never argued. It was clear that Allie fit perfectly into his life. They quickly got their marriage license, which was a relief. Afterward, they went to Walmart to look at rings in the jewelry section. The families gathered around as Tom examined different options. One diamond ring cost almost $600, and he felt nervous about the price. Allie noticed another ring and said, "That one." Tom looked at it. It was silver with a synthetic white sapphire in the center, framed by tiny synthetic ruby pieces. It was only $90. Tom commented, "I can get you a real diamond." Allie shook her head and replied, "Tom, the ring means a lot because it's from you. I just want to wear your ring. It doesn't matter what the stone is. I'll wear it proudly no matter its value. What I really want is to be Mrs. Calvert. Nothing else matters. If we didn't have to wait 3 days, I would marry you right now." Tom hesitated. "But you deserve a real—" She gently placed her finger on his lips and said, "What I deserve is to be your wife. Something special will happen on Friday. We will start our life together. I had plans for us after prom next week, but since we're getting married sooner, we won't need those plans." Tom pulled her into a warm hug, and she always melted into his arms. Allie whispered to him, "Don't worry about anything. I've prepared for this moment." Friday, April 28th, 2017. It felt strange to go to school knowing he was getting married that day. It was tough to focus on his lessons, but he was determined to keep his grades up. Allie sat beside him at lunch, their sides touching. She smiled and said, "I love you," many times, and he happily replied the same. Allie felt a deep sense of peace and happiness, grateful for the life she now had. Memories of harder times surfaced briefly, but today was a day of joy, and she pushed them aside. After school, she joined Tom for their quiet wedding at the courthouse. Dressed in a simple white floral dress, she stood before the judge with their parents as witnesses. It was a short ceremony, just how Allie wanted it, with only the closest people by their side. At 4:30, Judge Calvin Washington declared them husband and wife. Tom wore a plain silver band, and Allie's silver ring sparkled beside her sapphire engagement ring. Afterward, their parents brought them to Allie's house. As they entered, they noticed a congratulations balloon waiting in the cozy living room. Her small house was decorated with care, with more balloons by her bedroom door. One read "Love," and another, "Wedding Day." Her room had been tidied up with fresh linens, adding a special touch to the day. A light-hearted note from her family suggested ways to keep the room clean, which made her smile. Allie, still wearing her summer dress, looked at Tom with a playful glint in her eye. She felt at ease, and together they laughed, sharing a warm embrace. They talked quietly, savoring the special moments they'd created that day. As they sat close together, they shared quiet words of love and joy, grateful for each other and the simple, heartfelt moments that made this day memorable. He stood by her door but was a bit too eager. She held his hand gently and guided him, softly saying, "Take your time." It was a new experience for both of them, and soon she felt a wave of pleasure. He barely moved when he felt his moment come too soon. Feeling embarrassed about how quick it was, he pulled back. Allie wrapped her arms around him and said, "That was great. I love you so much." He replied, feeling down, "But it was just 10 seconds. She smiled brightly and said, "That's double what I thought. Tom, we were both new at this. I just shared this special moment with the person I love, and it makes me so happy." Allie danced a little on the bed, her joy evident. She then lay down, cleaned up a bit, and turned to him with a smile. He quickly found his excitement again, and she welcomed him back for another try. This time he managed to last longer, and they both shared a sweet moment together. After a third attempt, she enjoyed another wave of happiness, but he wasn't quite ready yet. At 6:30, they heard a voice from outside. "Dinner is ready." They got dressed and went out. Tom's father opened the door of their old SUV for them. They sat in the back as they drove to a restaurant where they had steak and potatoes. Both sets of parents helped pay, and Tom appreciated it, knowing it was a stretch for them. Tom's father raised his glass for a toast, saying, "To my son and his lovely partner. Allie, you are now like a daughter to me and my wife. We may not have much, but young love can thrive. I married your mom when I was really young and don't regret a moment. You'll need to work at it, but if you truly love each other, it can be wonderful." Allie's father stood and said, "Tom, you are now part of our family too. You will live under my roof until college." Chuck joined in with a chuckle, saying, "My roof is pretty small. And speaking of young parents, I was even younger when Allie was born. It was a tough start, but I don't regret it. I've been happier since I married her. Remember, it takes work, but true love can make it last." Dinner was a joyous time, bringing the two families together. They made it clear that Tom and Allie were now part of their family. They returned home at 8 o'clock. Allie hugged her parents and said, "We're going to my room for the evening. Good night." She took Tom into her room and closed the door behind them. After another cozy moment together, she lay on him, feeling tired and happy. She smiled and said, "I feel so joyful right now." Tom wrapped his arms around her and replied, "I feel the same way." Thoughts of the past came to Tom's mind briefly, reminding him to ensure Allie had the happy life she deserved. Tom and Allie were cuddling comfortably when he heard a soft sound. A moment later, he was sure he heard it again. The soft sounds continued. Allie chuckled, explaining that her mom, Sandra, was not shy when having fun with her husband. Tom asked, "Doesn't that bother you?" Allie shook her head. "Not at all. My parents still love each other a lot. It happens almost every night when he is home, so I'm used to it. When I was little, I walked in on them many times. Mom just said it was a special way that parents show their love." Allie giggled and said, "I told them they should always keep doing it." Tom made a face and replied, "I'm not sure I want to hear about it now." Allie laughed. "When a lot of my friends' parents started splitting up, I saw my parents' love as a blessing. They can't get enough of each other even after 20 years. I want that for us." Tom needed to use the bathroom, so he got up, put on his shorts, and walked toward the bathroom. As he turned the corner, he was surprised to see her father walking towards the bathroom. It was dark, but the moonlight revealed that he wasn't wearing anything. He mumbled, "Sorry," as he entered the bathroom. Tom went back to the room looking a bit shocked. Allie noticed and asked, "What's wrong?" Tom replied, "Your dad just walked into the bathroom in the buff. I think he was just cleaning up after all that noise." Allie explained, My family sleeps without clothes and it has never bothered me. For as long as I can remember, it was normal. If I need to go, I just go. With one bathroom, you just do what you need and then get back to bed." She continued, "I've seen my parents without clothes many times and they have seen me. It's not a big deal, it's just life. Speaking of which, I need to go too." She walked out casually as her father came out and said, "Good night, Dad." A couple of minutes later, she returned and said, "Your turn now." After Tom came back to their room, he remarked, "You seem so relaxed about this, but at school you dress very differently." Allie explained, "I always knew my parents slept without clothes, just like I do. It's comfortable and feels natural. We're not strict about it, but nobody makes a fuss. I've gone to the kitchen for breakfast without a care, and nobody minds. School is just a different setting with different rules." Tom replied, "At my home, we were quite the opposite. You were always dressed unless you were in your bedroom or bathroom with the door closed." Allie shrugged and said, "We are just different, I guess." Saturday, April 30th, 2017. Tom woke up, got dressed, and walked out into the living room, which was open to the kitchen. Tom found it hard to look Chuck in the eye. Chuck said, "Sorry." Sandra stepped in to ease the tension and said, "No, he isn't. Tom, we are not very formal about clothing at home. We have all slept without clothes since we became a family. Allie has grown up this way. We care for you like the son we never had. But we are not changing how we live." Allie came out of her room into the kitchen, gave her father a quick kiss on the cheek, and said, "Good morning, Daddy." Allie was not wearing much, but neither of her parents seemed to mind. Tom was surprised and asked, Did you forget to get dressed?" Allie shook her head. "Everyone here knows me well. It's just a body, and I'm not in front of anyone who hasn't seen me before." Allie went to the toaster, put in 2 pieces of bread, and waited for them to finish. When they were ready, she took the toast and sat down next to Tom. Allie hugged him gently and said, I woke up so happy this morning as your wife. Tom sighed and replied, I just didn't know you were so relaxed about being without clothes at home. Allie looked Tom in the eyes and said, If it bothers you, I can get dressed. You are my husband and I am your wife. She seemed upset but started to get up and walk toward her room. Tom sighed and said, Please stop. Tom asked, This means a lot to you, doesn't it? Can you explain? Allie simply said, Being without clothes feels nice, comfortable, and it makes me feel free. I really, really like it. She turned to walk back toward her bedroom. Tom said, Wait, please. Allie turned and looked at him. Tom asked, Does this mean a lot to you? Allie nodded. Tom said, Then I am wrong for trying to change you. I've seen nothing bad, so it is me who should fit into your life, not you into mine. He pulled her into a hug. Every time they hugged, she seemed to relax into his arms. She sighed and said, Thank you. I love you with my whole heart. She sat down again and finished her toast. Tom joked, Besides, what sane man complains about his wife being relaxed at home, right? Allie laughed. Not my awesome husband. Tom and Allie were enjoying a quiet moment together when they started to hear sounds coming from the other room. He tried to ignore it, but the noise was hard to overlook. Tom couldn't help but laugh, and soon Allie joined in too. They held each other and shared a good laugh. Allie sighed and snuggled closer to Tom, still giggling. They had already shared some special moments that day, and Allie was starting to feel a bit tired. He kissed his wife gently on the forehead, and they both laughed for a little while longer until they heard someone enter the bathroom. Monday, May 1st, 2017. Allie jumped into her married life, asking Tom to take her to the courthouse right after school to change her name. She wanted to be known as Allie Calvert. Within a week, she had updated her driver's license, social security card, and even her library card. As they left the federal building that evening, they were the last ones out as the door was locked behind them. But Allie had more to do. She entered the local bank, which was closing soon, and insisted they open a shared account. Even though Allie was usually accommodating, she was determined that they fully combine their lives. As they stepped out onto the sidewalk, Allie said, You can keep your own account, but I want you to put everything into our joint account as soon as you can. There's no more just Tom or just Allie. It's now Tom and Allie. Tom chuckled, knowing Allie usually got what she wanted with a gentle request. But this time, her desire to join their lives was strong. Friday, May 5th, 2017. It was prom night. Tom waited in the living room for Allie to come out of her parents' room. She walked out wearing a pretty blue floral dress that reached her mid-thigh. It was all they could afford, but it looked lovely. Allie typically went without makeup, but tonight she had on a bit of mascara and blush. Her hair was styled and flowed down to her shoulders. Tom smiled and said, You look beautiful. They arrived at the school and parked in the lot. As they approached the entrance, a fancy limo pulled up. The driver opened the door, and out came Brock Peterson with Brittany. Tom felt a moment of discomfort remembering his past with Brittany, but quickly dismissed it. Allie was a much better choice. Although Brittany had cared for him once, he knew he had a chance to build a lasting relationship with Allie if he put in the effort. He promised himself to love Allie fully. Allie teased, Are you jealous? Tom laughed lightly. Jealous of what? A fancy car? Allie replied, Of the head cheerleader living a glamorous life. Tom looked her in the eyes and said, Not at all. I'm not interested in that. In his mind, he thought, They belong together. He smiled at Allie, took her hand, and they walked into the prom together. As they stepped inside, Allie simply said, Will you dance with me? Tom grinned. He wasn't the best dancer, but he knew trying was what really mattered. It was a slow dance to Stay With Me by Sam Smith. She looked at him, drew closer, and kissed him. He felt a bit silly trying to dance quickly to Shut Up and Dance With Me, but she still appreciated his effort. More slow songs came on, and he found it easy to dance with her. She just wanted to be in his arms, moving gently together, often taking a moment to share sweet kisses. When a fast song played, Allie kindly left the dance floor to grab some snacks at a nearby table. Allie chatted with some friends, while Tom talked with a few of his teammates. When the slow songs played again, Allie returned without needing to say a word, and Tom led her back to the dance floor. As the night ended around 10, they were leaving when Emily, the co-captain of the cheer team, approached them. "Hey, you two, there's an after-prom party at Lake Nalshoni." Allie surprisingly asked, "Can we go?" Tom nodded and quickly sent a text to her parents to let them know they would be out late. He received a message reminding him to be careful about drinking and driving. He replied that he wouldn't drink. 20 minutes later, they arrived at Lake Nalshoni. The lake was really an old quarry that had filled with water and was mostly dug into the hillside. It had been left alone for years and was a known spot for people to gather. In the center, a bonfire crackled, surrounded by a cleared area, and there was a stack of tires holding pallets. One pallet had a keg, and another had a punch bowl. Someone had brought a radio that played upbeat music. Jerry, another teammate, called Tom over while Allie joined her friends. About an hour later, Tom was with some friends from the football team when Allie came over with Emily and a few other girls from their senior class. Allie had a cup in her hand and looked a bit unsteady. Allie called out, "Hey Tom, look at me." She seemed to be having a good time. The girls playfully danced around the fire. A few moments later, Allie teased him, saying, "Catch my dress." She tossed it, but it accidentally fell into the fire. Allie laughed, saying, "Oops." She giggled and continued to dance. One of the guys jokingly said, "Wow, look at that." Tom replied, Yeah." The guy continued, "Aren't you jealous?" Tom paused for a moment and said, "Not unless you do something." The guy grinned, "And what if I do?" Tom looked at him and said, "Then I'd have to step in." The guy laughed, but Tom remained serious. Tom tried to lighten the mood and said, "Just enjoy the party." The girls continued dancing joyfully in the glow of the fire. At the party, Allie was clearly affected by the drinks that had been spiked without her knowing. About 20 minutes in, she began to stumble near the campfire, almost losing her balance, but Tom quickly stepped in to steady her. Looking up at him with blurry eyes, she giggled, "Hi, Tom. I think I might have had a bit too much to drink." Tom chuckled, guiding her to sit down. "Yeah, it seems like it. Let's take it easy." Allie, still a bit dazed, looked around and mumbled about feeling good and being carefree. She was clearly enjoying herself, though a bit more uninhibited than usual. After some time, Tom decided it was best to take her home, as the night was wearing on. Gently helping her to her feet, he supported her as they walked to his car. By the time they reached her house, it was close to 1 in the morning. Her parents met them at the door, visibly surprised to see her state. Tom explained, "She didn't realize the punch was spiked. She's just a bit tipsy and needs some rest." Her dad thanked him, grateful Tom had brought her home safely. Tom managed to get Allie to her room where she sighed, smiling tiredly, expressing her happiness and relief to be home. Soon after, the night's festivities caught up with her, and she got a bit sick. Tom patiently helped her to the bathroom, where he did his best to clean up. Ensuring she was comfortable, he left her to rest, and the evening came to a close with everyone safe and sound. The shower was big and built onto the side of the house, sticking out a bit. It was placed far enough back that there were only 2 small walls around the bathroom, but it didn't really give privacy from the toilet. Tom was helping his wife out of the shower when someone banged on the door. Sandra called out, "Hurry up, I need to use the toilet." While he was trying to help his wife brush her teeth, Tom cracked the door open to say, "Just a minute." But Sandra wouldn't wait and came in saying, "I really need to clean up." Tom was surprised. Sandra was in the shower without clothes, holding a paper towel. She was a pretty 34-year-old with medium brown hair and a kind face with light freckles. Tom thought she looked attractive, even with a bit of age showing. Allie piped up, "Look, my mom is not wearing any clothes. She, still looks nice." Tom couldn't cover himself since he had to support his wife. Allie balanced a bit and said, "Hey, we are all without clothes. It's fine." Sandra threw the paper towel in the trash, moved the wet towels from the toilet lid, and opened the toilet. She stood there while saying, "I really need to go." Tom quickly tried to help his wife out, but Sandra was already sitting down before he could fully get away. He managed to pull back enough, but he could still hear her in the bathroom. A few minutes later, when Sandra came out, she said, "Sorry, Tom, we are all living in a small house, and there is no real privacy in the bathroom. The only place you can have some privacy is in the bedroom with the door closed. We use the toilet while someone showers. It's just how we live. No one is bothered by it, and I can't stand quick showers, so you can come in while I shower. We've all seen each other anyway." She smiled and joked. "By the way, my daughter is lucky to have you." Sandra winked and kissed Tom on the cheek, then laughed as she walked back to her bedroom. Tom helped his wife back to the bathroom, brushed her teeth for her, then carried her to their room and tucked her into bed. He kissed her goodnight, took off his clothes, and climbed in beside her. Even in her sleepy state, she moved closer and cuddled against him. Saturday, May 6th, 2017. Tom woke up to his phone buzzing. It buzzed more, then kept going. Allie's phone started ringing at the same time. Tom finally let go of his wife's arm, looked at his phone, and exclaimed, "Oh no!" Allie groaned, "I feel terrible." Tom replied, "That's a hangover. The punch you drank was definitely spiked." He quickly put on some shorts and headed to the kitchen. Her parents were there, looking worried. Her mom asked, "How is she feeling?" Tom grimaced. "Not as bad as she will." Suddenly they heard a scream from her bedroom. Tom added, "I didn't think of it before, but there are pictures and videos from last night. It all started as a dare near the punch bowl and got out of hand." Both of her parents looked shocked. Tom continued, "There are quite a few too." Allie then entered the kitchen looking upset and said, "Tom, I'm so sorry. Please don't be mad at me." Tom shook his head and reassured her, "I'm not angry. Nobody crossed my lines, and that's what matters." Allie sniffled, "Are you really not mad? Everyone saw me even when I fell." Tom handed her some aspirin and water. "We're fine. You might just have a few embarrassing moments coming up." Allie blushed, but an awkward silence followed. Tom had a realization and asked, "You enjoyed it, didn't you? Being naked in front of everyone. It was just a fun moment, but you felt a thrill, right? Be honest, because I can tell." Allie turned red and quietly admitted, Yes, and I don't want to wear anything. You said you liked me this way. I like it too." Tom laughed. "I won't complain. Just remember to keep your personal space and no kissing anyone else besides me." Allie sighed. "It's embarrassing. They will tease me on Monday." Tom hugged her and said, "You look great." Tom looked at his phone and saw over 500 pictures and 48 videos. Allie leaned against him, trying to ease her headache. Tom smiled at her. "Really, we're fine. In fact, I'm saving all the pictures and videos. You look amazing." Allie winced and said, "Monday is going to be interesting." Monday, May 8th, 2017. Interesting was an understatement. Tom stayed by Allie's side as much as he could to show there were no hard feelings, but the other students giggled and the boys couldn't help but stare. The only friends she felt comfortable with were the other girls who had also joined in. One couple, Alicia and John, ended their relationship. The laughs kept going throughout the day, and Allie felt really down. Things improved after school. As they walked inside, Allie answered her phone next to Tom, excitement growing. She shared that they were invited with Emily and her ex-boyfriend Bryce to the best club in North Indianapolis, the Barnstable Club. She had won 4 tickets. Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. Tuesday felt a lot like Monday, filled with giggles and quiet teasing. After the 4th period, there was a meeting in the auditorium for all the seniors about graduation. Allie sat next to Tom, leaning against him, trying to hide her tears. Tom was fed up. He lifted Allie into his arms, carried her to the front, and took the microphone. Tom said firmly, "We all know what happened, and I want to say this clearly. I am proud to have such a wonderful wife as Allie. We are not breaking up, and I'm not even upset. In fact, I find her incredibly beautiful. I am angry at anyone who is laughing at her and making her feel bad. She didn't know the punch was mixed. She thought it was a good choice. This is a learning experience. So we all know how amazing my wife is, and for those laughing, how many of you get to be with someone as beautiful as Allie every day?" "I didn't think so." Most of the senior girls said, "Aw," and the boys stopped laughing. Tom picked Allie up in his arms and kissed her gently. She smiled and said, "Tom, I love you so much." He took his seat again with Allie by his side. She snuggled closer to him because he had just told all those people that she was his. She felt safe, and it was a great feeling. Friday, May 12th, 2017, Tom dressed in his best pants and a nice shirt for graduation. He chatted with Allie's parents while he waited for her to get ready. When Allie came out, Tom smiled and said, "You look amazing." Allie wore her graduation dress, which was also perfect for a party. It was black and had a nice neckline with 2 straps over her shoulders. She planned to wear her graduation gown over it for most of the ceremony, only revealing the dress for a bit after everyone had received their diplomas. The dress was a bit short, and when she turned around, it showed more than usual. Sandra saw the dress and giggled, while Chuck simply said, "Have a good night, kids." Tom opened the door for his wife. As she got in, she adjusted her dress and sat down. Tom laughed and said, "This is going to be tricky driving like that." Allie giggled back, "Oh, I know." They arrived at the Barnstable Club at 7 that evening. The Barnstable Club was a private dance club that only let in those who met its standards. There was a door next to them with another guard who had a sign that said, "Ticket holders." Tom looked at their tickets, which were not like regular ones. They were made of plastic and said one-day membership instead of admission. The guard scanned the tickets with a special device and it turned green. He pointed to the ticket and said, "Table 10. They entered the club. Tom and Allie were both good-looking, but most people there looked like models. They looked around. Tom found their table and they sat beside each other. Allie let out a happy sigh as she enjoyed the lively atmosphere of the trendy club. Emily arrived with her date, Bryce, 10 minutes later. He was her recent ex. They had decided to break up since they were going to different colleges and wanted to enjoy their summer without any complications. He was wearing smart pants and a button-down shirt, just like Tom. Emily had on a blue dress that came down to her mid-thigh. A slow song began to play, and Allie gave Tom a hopeful look. Tom knew exactly what she wanted before she even asked. She was always able to express her wishes so easily. Allie was very sweet and usually got her way with a simple request and a soft gesture. They danced to 2 slow songs. Allie lifted her dress a bit after seeing another woman do the same. She playfully guided Tom's hands to her waist and smiled. No one seemed to mind. Emily laughed when Tom and Allie returned to the table and said, "I can't believe you danced like that." Allie replied, "I've changed a lot since that night we did that fun thing after prom. I enjoy it and Tom is fine with it as long as we agree on some rules. Basically, I can't touch a man where he's covered by a swimsuit, and he can't touch me in places covered by a bikini. It's a good rule." Emily nodded and then gasped, pointing at a table 5 away. "Look, that's Tyler Jensen. He plays for the Colts." He was tall and fit, looking like someone from a magazine. He was definitely more attractive than most men there. He noticed Emily looking and then turned his gaze to Allie. He walked over and asked Allie, not acknowledging Tom, "I saw you dancing and you look like fun. Would you like to dance?" Allie smiled brightly and said, "Oh, no, thank you." Tyler was surprised and asked, "No?" Allie replied, "No." Tyler said, "It's just a dance." Allie explained, "Any girl who dances with you runs the risk of getting involved with you later. We both know that." "I am married, and the best way to prevent an affair is to have boundaries." Tyler said, "Your husband must feel really unsure of himself." Allie laughed. "That won't work on me. Or my husband." Tom smiled at Allie and gave her a side hug. He chuckled and said, "I'm completely straight, but if I were single, I might consider it for you." Everyone at the table laughed, except for Tyler, who felt insulted and angry. He walked away, shaking his head, which was unusual for him. Tom kissed Allie's cheek and said, "I know that wasn't easy. Thank you." Allie responded, "It wasn't as hard as you think. My first thought was yes, but I know I could never be unfaithful to you. I don't want to lose you." She smiled, took his hand, and squeezed it. She kissed him and said, "My grandma told me that a good man saves the best part of his heart for one loyal woman. I know I hold that special place in your heart, Tom. I will never give that up for anyone or anything. If I did, I know I could never get it back." Tom melted at her words. Emily said, "Oh." Allie observed Tyler closely. He looked around the room for a while, sipping his drink and sometimes giving Allie a hard look. Allie said, "Watch Tyler, he's trying again." She gestured for everyone to see as Tyler approached a table where a woman in her 30s sat wearing a red dress. She was next to a man, likely her husband, judging by the rings on her finger. They were with another married couple of the same age. The other woman wore a white dress with a deep neckline. The woman in the red dress was attractive and wore a dress that showed off her legs. Tyler approached her and asked to dance. Without hesitation, she stood up, and they danced well together. The first fast song didn't allow for much contact. The next song was slow, giving Tyler a chance to get closer without alarming her husband. As the next slow song played, her husband looked uncomfortable. The woman gazed into Tyler's eyes, caught up in the moment. He whispered something in her ear. She smiled, but didn't say anything. Allie told her group, "You are watching a relationship struggle." The woman returned to her table and sat for a few minutes. At first, they seemed to be arguing, but soon they appeared to be getting along better. Allie noticed the woman spilled some water on herself, then stood up to dry off. Her friend in the white dress followed her. Allie said, "I need to use the restroom." She stood up and walked toward the restrooms. Allie was about 30 seconds behind the women. The woman in the red dress spoke with the woman in the white dress, who nodded and went back to the table. Allie noticed a marriage coming to an end, and then thought for a moment before coming up with a plan. She walked past the woman and visibly shook her head, saying, "Yikes." The woman stopped and asked, "What's the matter with you?" Allie replied, "I'm feeling sad. I'm watching a marriage fall apart." The woman said, "I don't know what you mean." Allie explained, "He made a flirtatious move on me half an hour ago. My heart raced when he asked me to dance. I know what you might be thinking. I was just wise enough not to get up at all." The woman said, "It's just a casual thing." Allie nodded. "And it can hurt a man who seems to really care for you. How long has it been?" The woman answered, 10 years. This is a big opportunity." Allie pointed to her rings and said, "The rings on my finger aren't worth much. The main stone is just a sapphire. We don't have much and we're young. Right now you are richer than me with your money and a husband who seems to love you, but by tomorrow morning I will feel richer than you." The woman objected. "But," Allie shrugged and said, "I can't stop you. My grandma taught me that every man with a good heart has a special place reserved for a woman in his life. It's meant for his wife. All he asks for is love and loyalty. If you go home with Tyler, you will lose that special place in his heart. And even if things get better later, you might never get back to it. You could end up just being a close friend, and there's a good chance he might leave you. You would be hurting him in the last 10 years you've had together." The woman insisted, "But it's just a casual thing." Allie shook her head. "You know that isn't true. You're trying to convince yourself of a lie. If you go with Tyler, there's a good chance you'll never get back into his heart." Allie shrugged again, saying, "It's your choice. Tomorrow morning I will wake up to my husband who will tell me he loves me, and I will see that love in his eyes. I own his heart. It belongs to me. Tomorrow you will look into your husband's eyes after what you did and see that love is gone. All you will have is one night that feels amazing. I know my husband may not give a wild experience like Tyler could, but he is strong and would never accept me being unfaithful. He is a wonderful mix of strength and kindness. On Sunday, I will see love in his eyes again. You might see emptiness in your husband's eyes. On Monday, he could decide to leave and seek advice from a lawyer." The woman's expression changed. She closed her eyes and sighed. "Ugh." Allie was surprised and asked, "You know I'm right, don't you?" The woman began to cry and said, "How can I fix this?" Allie replied, "The most important thing is to apologize. If your husband is reasonable, he knows he can't compete with Tyler. No one in this building can. Tell him you were just a silly girl and that you're sorry. If he responds well, tell him you want to dance with him. He'll want that. It's a way for him to feel close to you again since you've not broken your promise to only be with him. You got close, but you didn't go too far. Let's hope that works. After a couple of dances, maybe lift your dress a little and gently hand him your underwear, saying you want to make it up to him. If he takes it well, ask him if he wants you to lower your dress back down. If he says to leave it, let him take the lead. It's a good sign that he's claiming you again. If he wants you to lower it, keep reminding him how silly you were for dancing with Tyler. Then maybe lean in for a kiss if he's okay with it. By the way, earlier tonight I danced with my dress a bit high and it turned out fine." Allie lifted her short dress slightly to show she wasn't wearing anything underneath. She said, "See, I came dressed this way to excite my husband, and it's working. Tonight I will give everything to him and then lie in his arms, knowing he loves me and is mine." Allie laughed. "Security didn't say a word when I danced like this, and I felt free." The woman introduced herself. "I'm Lindsay Ballard." Allie smiled back. "I'm Allie Calvert." Lindsay looked at Allie and cried softly, "I almost ruined my marriage." Allie replied, "It's like a close call. If it nearly hit you, it missed." Allie said, "When you're dancing with your husband and want to be a little playful, follow my example." Tyler walked into the room and saw the women talking. Lindsay shook her head at him, and he looked concerned. Lindsay hugged Allie and said, "Thank you." Allie smiled, waited a moment to give Lindsay some space, then walked back to Tom and said, "Come dance with me." She smiled, letting him know there was something special waiting for later. As Allie passed by Lindsay, she saw her crying on her husband's shoulder. She heard him say, "I forgive you." Allie felt happy. She had helped in a big way that night. Allie looked into Tom's eyes as they awkwardly swayed to a slow song. She loved him for trying. He wasn't the best dancer, but he did it for her. He had given her his heart willingly, and she cherished the fact that she held a special place in it. As the second song played, Allie playfully lifted her dress again and encouraged him with a whisper. She was surprised at how bold she was feeling and enjoyed every moment. Allie noticed Lindsay stepping away from her husband. Lindsay lifted her dress and playfully handed her undergarments to him with a smile. She was shy but continued to look at her husband, who grinned happily. Taking a chance, Allie slid her dress off her shoulders, letting it drop away. People murmured but didn't stop her. She draped her dress over Tom's shoulder and danced in just her shoes, feeling the warmth of her husband's affection in his eyes. She kissed him, smiling as she moved closer, swaying gently. After a moment, Lindsay nodded at Allie and whispered to her husband, who responded with a playful grin. Lindsay took off her dress and handed it to him. Allie glanced at Lindsay, who moved closer to her husband, sharing a loving kiss as they swayed together in a warm embrace. After a few songs, a security guard came over and cleared his throat, signaling that the fun was over. By then, 4 women were without their dresses, and 2 had pushed theirs down. They quickly straightened up and got dressed, all smiling, knowing their partners had great memories from the night. Allie smiled as she saw that Lindsay had managed to keep her relationship strong. Looking over, she noticed Lindsay and her husband were watching her. Allie raised her glass of water in a friendly gesture, and they approached her. The man extended his hand to Allie and said, "Thank you. I know what you did. I can't repay you, but I appreciate it." Allie replied, "Don't be upset with her. Every woman in here feels his charm." He nodded and said, "I could be tempted by him." Tom chimed in, "I thought the same earlier." The man continued, "I'm frustrated, but I understand. I still love her. Even I can see how captivating he is. We won't come back here again, though. I wonder who he'll charm tonight. Thanks to you, it wasn't my wife. It could have been if she'd left me alone like that. I'm James Ballard, and this is my wife, Lindsay." "We have to go now," Lindsay said. "I want to show him how much I appreciate him, all night." He put his arm around her and led her outside. They were about to dance when Tyler approached and said, "You've ruined my evening twice now. You owe me a dance." Allie replied, "No, I don't. You were flirting with a married woman. You almost caused her a lot of trouble." Tyler insisted, "Her marriage is not my issue." Allie countered, "You only seem to pursue women who are taken. That's your pattern." Tyler smirked. "So what?" Allie said, "You're like a predator. How many relationships have you harmed?" Tyler shrugged. "I don't care. Most will stay married." Allie shot back, "That doesn't mean it's a good marriage. Many will end in divorce within a year. Trust is key, and the women you pursue won't trust." Tyler said, "One dance. You owe me." Allie raised her voice. "Please leave me alone. I'm married just like the other women you chase. The difference is that I'm loyal." Tyler noticed everyone in the room staring at him and not approvingly. He sneered and walked away. A few moments later, Tyrone Washington from the Indiana Pacers came over and asked Emily, "Would you like to dance?" Emily smiled and accepted, joining him on the dance floor. Her date, Bryce, watched and sighed. "We broke up last week because we are going to different colleges. We don't owe anything to each other. I'm just here for tonight." He smiled and added, "Hey, it's on our bucket list, right?" Bryce shrugged again and said, "It hurts, but I didn't pay for the tickets. I don't want to be the odd one out. I'm leaving. Tyrone can take her home when he's done." Bryce left, feeling hurt but not as crushed as the husbands betrayed by their partners who went home with Tyler. Tom shuddered. "That was tough." Allie replied, "Just a little. She did tell me they broke up mutually last week, but she won the tickets for tonight. They cost $200 each." A few minutes later, two big men approached Allie and Tom. The larger one said, "I'm afraid you need to leave. Tyler is very upset, and that makes management unhappy." Tom said, "So it's Tyler's personal hunting ground for married women?" The man grinned. "Not just Tyler." Tom sighed and said, "Well, there's no way I'm fighting this giant. Let's go." Allie smiled, stood next to Tom, and nudged him playfully. She said, "Yes, plus I can't wait to spend some time with you." Saturday, May 13th, 2017. Allie received a call from Emily around 1 in the afternoon to share her story. They talked for about 30 minutes. Tom asked, "What's the short version?" Allie nodded and summarized. "Emily went back to Tyrone's place after dancing. He's quite impressive." They got right to it, and she felt excited. He started, and it was a bit uncomfortable at first, but she adjusted. They began, and she experienced a couple of strong moments of pleasure early on until he got close to finishing and pushed harder, which was tough for her. She woke up the next day ready for another try. They aimed for a third attempt, but it didn't go well this time. She said it was a memorable experience, though. She was with a famous person. He invited her over again, but she said no. She mentioned that it had been a bit difficult and she might need to visit her doctor. Tom said, "It wasn't right for her to leave Bryce alone like that." Allie nodded and replied, "Yes, it was wrong to leave him alone, but this was just a date, not a serious relationship." Tom asked, "If you were single, would you have gone with Tyler?" Allie replied, "Why do you want to know? Just to be clear, I'm not in a relationship with you. If I wasn't committed, I might have gone home with him for the experience." Tom nodded. "That's hard to hear." Allie continued, "I don't want to lie to you. Honestly, I was asked, and I said no to him last night right away. I had the chance but chose not to consider it. Your question was about if I didn't love you. But I think he wouldn't have approached me if I wasn't wearing your rings. I feel like he went after married women." Tom paused and asked, "What were you thinking when he came over?" Allie said, "Do you really want to talk about this? I won't hold back and it might hurt." Tom said, "Yes, we need to be completely honest with each other." Allie admitted, "He is the most attractive man I've ever seen. I felt my heart race when he came over, especially when he asked me to dance. I knew if I got up, I might be tempted, so I turned him down right away. Please don't judge me, it's just how things are." Tom nodded. "I get it. A lot of men don't realize how appealing a really handsome guy can be to women." Allie reassured him, "Make no mistake. I turned that chance down because I hold your heart, and I will never give that up, even for the most handsome man." She looked deeply into his eyes and said, "I am completely devoted to you, Thomas Calvert. Never doubt that." Tom laughed and said, "I know I'm not as handsome as he is." Allie laughed too. "I'm surprised he noticed me at all. Emily is prettier, yet he approached me first. I do think he was just looking for someone in a relationship." Allie asked, "Are you okay?" Tom nodded and kissed her. "Yes, we're doing great. You just confirmed what I already felt. Had you said anything else, I would have known you were trying to protect my feelings anyway." Sunday, May 14th, 2017. At 8 in the morning, Tom woke up and sat up, checking his phone when he suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, wow!" Allie woke up quickly and asked, "What happened?" Tom replied, "Bryce sent me a link. Some guy killed Tyler Jensen last night around 4 in the morning. It seems the husband of a woman he was with came home. He broke into the house, found his wife in Tyler's bed, and shot Tyler multiple times. Someone commented that a paramedic they knew needed a spatula to clean up after Tyler because he had been shot so many times. The husband is in custody, and the wife is safe, but shocked." Allie thought for a moment and said, "I know I'm supposed to feel sorry for Tyler, but—" Tom nodded. "I feel the same way." Allie got up, stretched, and walked outside, passing her family in the kitchen. Tom had come to accept that she enjoyed being free. Allie stepped onto the front porch without anything on. The house was far enough from the road that no one would see her. She stretched and enjoyed the warm sunlight on her skin. Ahem. Allie turned around. Lindsay stood at the walkway with an envelope. Her BMW was parked beside the house, and no one had noticed her arrive. Lindsay said, "A little gift from my husband and me. It's not enough, but I can't really repay you. It's a $500 gift card for Target. I saw the love in my husband's eyes this morning, even after our argument last night. He won't let Denise, my friend in the white dress, into our house anymore. He realized she was covering for me with Tyler." Allie said, "He's right. She is not your friend. She helped you make a bad choice. It took someone like me to help you see what you were risking." Lindsay asked, "You weren't just passing by?" Allie shook her head. "Someone wiser than me once said, 'The only thing needed for bad to succeed is for good people to do nothing.' I saw trouble coming, so I followed you and stepped in." Lindsay asked, "It wasn't an accident? You stepped in on purpose?" Allie nodded. Lindsay looked at this small, blonde woman who was completely open about her life and realized that she had changed Lindsay's life for the better, and she began to cry. "My apologies to George Anderson, and February sucks. I wanted to explore a theme where the wife stayed loyal. This story had some twists. I enjoyed writing about the ending of Tyler and Will included in many future stories. It's interesting. Think of Allie as the opposite of Dee from FS. In the spirit of It's a Wonderful Life, in the other time when Tom was with Brittany, Allie wasn't there to help Lindsay, and she ended up with Tyler. She was divorced 3 months later. Lindsay was not in her old neighborhood 6 months later when an elderly neighbor's house caught fire and she found herself trapped inside. It is strange how we influence each other's lives in ways we might not even realize. Allie had decided not to date anyone else. She was starting a new chapter without the past getting in the way. Allie's mom was inspired by a memorable scene from an old movie called Porky's. It was one of the funniest scenes that she could remember. If you don't know it, you could search for it online. Wednesday, May 16, 2017. Tom woke up just before the alarm rang to wake them for school. Allie was curled up against his side, warm and cozy. She murmured softly as she slowly woke up from his movements. He thought, "Life is good." Tom smiled, enjoying his new life with Allie always by his side. The feeling of her warmth next to him was comforting. She was always close, whether holding hands or resting against him. She told him, "I love you," many times a day, and he always replied in kind. He could see her love for him in her eyes. It filled him with joy. He felt her soft body next to him and lifted the blanket to see her. Her back was warm against him. She slowly woke up and asked with a smile, "Like what you see?" She leaned up and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. He chuckled and said, "I would love for you to sleep next to me for a long time." She laughed and replied, "Okay, I love it too. It's a deal." He asked playfully, "Really?" She nodded and said, "I love you completely. I just want you to appreciate me." Allie paused and added, "I felt free and confident when I was myself. I liked that people noticed me. At first it bothered me when others joked about it, but then I realized I enjoyed that feeling." Tom pulled her close and said, "Just be careful. You can be yourself as long as you remember our agreement. I don't know why it doesn't bother me, but it doesn't." Allie asked again, "Really?" Tom nodded and said, "I don't know why that is, but just let me know your plans so I can be okay with them." She agreed and nodded. Sitting up, she stretched at the edge of the bed. He admired her, and she laughed at his gaze. He said, "You take my breath away." She smiled, enjoying his attention, but then got dressed. She thought it was good that the school didn't make a big deal after the prom incident. When they arrived at the house, Allie's parents were already having breakfast. It was a nice but quick meal. Allie's mom kissed both of them on the cheek as they headed out the door. Her dad even gave Tom a friendly side hug. At school, things were calming down after the prom chaos. The girls were not laughing at Allie anymore, and some seemed a bit jealous that she had a guy who clearly cared for her. A few boys still looked at her in a way that made her uncomfortable, but now that they weren't teasing her, it didn't bother her much. After all, everyone seemed to know everything about her now, and she didn't have to worry about secrets. When they got home from school, Allie found an envelope addressed to her from Martin's University. Tom went to get a drink while Allie opened her mail. Tom's father-in-law asked him, "Do you want to go fishing this Saturday? My wife and your mom want to take Allie to the mall and spoil her. They have saved some money for her future plans because there wasn't a big wedding. Your mom really enjoys having a daughter, and I love having a son to fish with. Maybe we can take your dad along too?" Tom nodded, saying, "I would love that, sir." Allie's mom added, "I thought we agreed. We are now your parents, and Allie is your sister now too." It felt a bit strange at first, but it felt good, so Tom said, "I would love to go fishing with you, Dad." Chuck patted Tom on the shoulder and said, "That's better." Allie called out, "Everyone come in here." Tom entered the living room with her parents. Allie looked shocked and was shaking as she handed a paper to Tom. She said, "These papers were in my envelope by mistake. Someone at the office messed up." Tom stared at the paper, then sat down, surprised. The first paper was a full scholarship offer for academics, not for football, which he had only applied for without an initial offer. It strangely listed his major as web marketing and photography instead of business. Tom said, "But I applied for business." Allie replied, "The offer is for web marketing and photography at no cost." She looked deeply into his eyes and said, "It's free as long as you choose web marketing and photography. No loans, just you and me in college together." Allie then passed 2 identical papers to her mom. Sandra read them and began to sway. Chuck quickly caught her and helped her sit on the couch. She held out a paper weakly, which Chuck took and read. He looked at Sandra, confused. "I knew you were good at art, but when did you apply to Martin's?" Sandra replied softly. "I didn't." Chuck said, "But you must have. You have a complete scholarship for web marketing and photography from Martin's." Sandra said gently, "Chuck, I really didn't apply. I'm happy being a maid at the hotel. I love our life. My job is tiring, but coming home to you is all that I need." Allie had 2 more papers. They were just like the ones given to Tom's mother, Anne. Tom remembered a lesson from the past. Patrick had once said, "Some mistakes are meant to be." Tom understood this was what that meant, and it reflected the most important part of his journey. This was the best way forward for the 5 people he cared about the most. He said, "Let's go for it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for everyone. Think about it. Better lives for all of us, and we will be together." Chuck smiled. "My wife is going to graduate from college." Sandra replied, "It's been years since I've been in a classroom." Tom felt relieved. Chuck was excited and encouraging his wife. He said, "Sandra, this is a full scholarship, tuition, room, and board. Think what this means for us." Chuck was thrilled about his wife's opportunity, while Sandra seemed uncertain. Chuck asked, "Where exactly is Martin's again?" Allie replied, "Outside Augusta, Georgia." Chuck nodded, ready to explore any chances in the area with his company. Tom said, "Let's go tell my mom." They drove to Tom's parents' house and shared the offer from Martin's. She had the same reaction as Sandra. They decided to meet the next day for a pizza picnic to celebrate the scholarships and discuss their next steps. Later that night, Tom sighed as he relaxed after spending time with his wife. Allie lay down beside him and said, "I really needed that. That was great." Tom chuckled. "I think I'm starting to understand." Allie smiled. "Sometimes I just need you to take charge. It doesn't have to be rough, but I like it when you're confident. Mostly I enjoy gentle moments, but every now and then I want to feel that intensity, just knowing I belong to you." She kissed him warmly. After they kissed for a while, Allie cuddled against his chest. Tom heard some noises from her parents' room. He was now used to it. Allie sighed and said, "Did you hear that? I want that. They have been together for almost 20 years and there's still a spark between them. That's why I'm loyal to you. I want the kind of love my mom has. Kids often look up to their parents. You can see my mom sometimes giving my dad kisses that say it all." She passionately kisses him, showing how much she wants him. It's a little surprising until you see how deep her feelings go. She desires him even after all this time, and that's something special. Thursday, May 17th, 2017. Tom drove his wife home after school. They had received 4 important envelopes from Martin's University, which included everything they needed to accept their place there. Sandra was waiting with a big smile and said, "I called Anne, and we're going to celebrate tonight. We'll have a picnic dinner in the park and open our envelopes together." Allie beamed and kissed her husband, saying, "I can't wait for this next chapter in our lives. We'll have our own home, just the two of us. The best part is that we'll be close to both our parents, so they'll still be part of our lives." She looked deeply into his eyes and said sincerely, "I love my life with you." Tom felt that his life with Allie was everything he had ever wanted. At the pizza picnic that evening, they gathered around a picnic table. Sandra handed Tom and Allie their envelopes, while Anne pulled out her own from a travel bag. Allie opened her envelope and reviewed the first sheet. It contained her personal information, along with lines to note any corrections. The second form was about her medical history, which she filled out with Tom, her mother, and Anne. The third letter was an introduction for her major, web marketing and photography. As Allie read it, she felt a wave of nervousness wash over her, and Tom shared the same feeling. Sandra's expression was hard to read, and Anne seemed quite worried. Hank turned to his wife and asked, "What's wrong, dear?" Anne handed the letter to him, and he began to read. "Welcome to the Martin's Art Program. Our art major goes beyond the typical focus. It is a 5-year journey to create a substantial body of work, which is more demanding than usual. Our records show that you are interested in web marketing and photography. This program requires you to develop a body of work in 3 themes along with completing the core requirements. Please list several themes you'd like to explore briefly, as they will need to be approved." The rest of the letter discussed how classes would be structured. It mentioned that students in photography would need to engage in certain activities for their work, and those taking part would earn credits to help them collaborate with others in the program. The system was called Pose Exchange. At the bottom of the letter, there were options for the types of classes where models could pose. Please indicate your availability for these classes. You must choose at least 3. Life drawing, MF sketching with pencil and charcoal classic photo, MF posing in a classical style, glamour photo, F posing in a glamorous way, acrylic nudes, MF posing for a painting class, long poses, watercolor, MF posing for a painting class, long poses, clay sculpture, MF posing for a sculpture class, long poses, photo reenacting classics, MF reenacting famous artworks, reenacting glamour, F posing like in a well-known magazine, male physique, M posing in a simple manner, the classic male, males posing as in classical art, photo couples, MF posing together in classic stances. Note that close proximity is needed. Non-explicit attached is your pose exchange code, 15cal008. Hank finished reading the letter and chuckled. "My wife is going to model. I never thought this would happen." Anne asked, "And you're okay with that?" Hank replied, "I always enjoyed how confident you were." Anne said, "That was a long time ago and that was different." Hank continued, "And this is an amazing chance for a free college education with free housing for 5 years and free food for you, with discounts for me." Anne worried, "But everyone will know what I look like." Hank reassured her, "As long as no one bothers you, I'm fine. This is a great opportunity for you. Take it. I'm supportive." Allie looked at Tom and asked, "Are you okay with all of this? We talked about the drawing class, but I didn't fully understand it. I have to pose for photos a lot." Tom thought for a moment and said, "There are already many pictures and videos of you out there. We should talk about our limits, but I'm okay with it. If you were to get close with someone else, that would upset me. A lot of people have seen your pictures, and it doesn't bother me. In fact, I think it shows your confidence." Allie nodded and laughed. "Oh, no. You'll have to pose too. I vote for male physique." Tom gasped. "Oh, no." Sandra laughed. "Tom, I think you're overthinking it. I've told my daughter she's lucky. I can see many people wanting to pose with you." Tom nodded. Then Allie continued laughing and said, "Now your major is the same as mine and you'll be posing too." She paused, then giggled and added, "And you'll have to see your mom in the pictures." Allie laughed hard, almost to the point of tears. Tom did not seem happy and shook his head when Anne, who was still surprised, thought about being near her son. Sandra paused for a moment before joining Allie in a laugh. Despite the awkwardness, they knew everything would work out. Everyone present felt like family and cared for one another. Tom was used to being informal at their home, and over time, everyone would get accustomed to it. It took about 10 minutes for the pizzas to arrive at the park, and soon they all sat down to eat. The conversation mostly revolved around the Martins. Allie said to Tom, "We need to talk about being exposed around strangers when the other is not there." Tom nodded and replied, "I trust you, but I don't trust them." Allie continued, "Don't you think I have the same concerns? You are an attractive guy and people can often sense that. Some will pay attention to you. You have enough charm to be appealing, but you are not overly self-absorbed. Any girl looking for a steady boyfriend will notice you." Tom asked, "Most?" Allie sighed. "Oh, men can be so unsure of themselves. No one is perfect. Just like there is no woman who has everything a man wants. Emily was with a high-status guy but ended up going home with someone else who fit the alpha type. It was thrilling for her, but not very satisfying in other ways. Many girls at the event might not be looking for a serious relationship, but a few will be. Those are the ones to keep an eye on." Allie looked directly at him. "Don't pretend you don't wonder what it's like to be with someone who is very attractive. Everyone is curious, just like I wonder about deeper experiences. It's okay to be curious, but I promise to be loyal to you." Chuck nodded and added, "Plus, when I'm away for days, I just have to trust my wife to handle things." Sandra took his hand and said sincerely, "I promise." He felt reassured by her words. Chuck smiled and said, "I know." Anne told Hank something similar, and he gently rubbed her shoulder. After reviewing the list, Allie changed the topic. "What classes are you planning to help with? I want to do glamour photography, life drawing, and some creative roles. What about you, my dear?" Tom glanced at the list and sighed. "I think I'll sign up for male physique, life drawing, and classic photography." Sandra thought for a moment and added, "I like Allie's ideas. I'm fine with that." Anne was still surprised and said, I guess I will do what Anne and Allie are doing." Hank looked at his wife and asked, "Why are you nervous? You're beautiful, you know." Anne replied, "You and my doctor are the only ones who have seen me without clothes." Hank said, "Well, maybe I want to show off my lovely wife. I am proud of how you look, but I want you to keep two things on." Anne guessed, "My bra and panties." Hank shook his head and said, "Your wedding and engagement rings. If anyone asks, tell them you are Hank Calvert's beautiful wife." Anne had to admit, sometimes Hank could really warm her heart. She smiled. This was one of those moments she cherished being with him. Allie looked at Tom and thought for a moment. She said, "Since we will be posing for photos with strangers, I want you to take pictures of me for photo books like my dad does with my mom." Tom asked, "What do you mean?" Sandra laughed. "We have a big collection. Chuck has taken special pictures of me since I turned 18. Tom said, "Like magazines?" Sandra laughed. "Most like that, but we have several books with different themes." Anne nearly spat out her drink and Tom asked, "What?" Sandra nodded. "Yep, I enjoy posing and he enjoys snapping the pictures. We create photo books on Shutterfly together. It's fun." Allie nodded. "I want you to do the same with me, Tom. I want the largest collection of my pictures to be from my husband. We can make the books together. We can start with the after-prom photos and add to them." Allie thought for a moment and said, "The instruction letter said we have to come up with themes. What themes should I suggest?" Tom asked, "Male or female?" Allie thought again and said, "Females. They're just easier to work with. Guys can be a handful, and I prefer to avoid that." Anne agreed. "Women will be easier to manage." Sandra thought for a moment and said, "Both could work." Chuck laughed and said, "Watch out for the guys." Sandra laughed, made a cutting motion with her fingers, and said, "Boy craziness can be tamed." Allie looked at Tom, who said, "No way I'm taking pictures of a man." Allie playfully asked, "What about women?" Tom looked at his wife and said, "You are welcome at every meeting when I do my photos. I'll never hide anything from you." Allie replied, "I will probably turn down many of those invites. Tom, we can't be together all the time, and I trust you. But if I sense something off..." Tom smiled and said, "Understood." Allie said, "Tom, if you ever get a bad feeling about someone, tell me. I promise to always listen." She pointed to her heart and simply said, "Mine!" Allie woke up late that night to Tom next to her and she smiled. She thought, "This is nice, I hoped for this." A little playful behavior while I slept. She looked up, smiled, and softly said, "Nice." Once she was fully awake, she relaxed and seemed eager to join in. It took about 10 minutes for them to share a special moment, and she felt a gentle wave of joy afterwards. She loved that sense of being close. After they rested, she looked at him and said, "I enjoyed this, but let's not do it all the time. I need my space." She got up and went to the bathroom, then returned with a wet wipe to clean him up after taking care of herself. She kissed him softly, then turned over to sleep again. Tom woke up with Allie snuggled against him, just like always. Knowing this would be their routine brought him joy. He got dressed and went into the living room. Chuck was at the table reading the newspaper, and Sandra was there too. She smiled playfully and said, "I told you we're not changing for you. I just didn't feel like getting dressed." Tom didn't know how to respond and said, "I'm not sure how to handle this." Chuck laughed and said, "We don't mind as long as you don't touch. Well, her or yourself." Allie came out of their room, walked over to her dad, gave him a quick peck on the cheek, then did the same to her mom before making toast. She sat next to her mother, both of them feeling free. Allie smiled at him, and her happiness made him happy too. Chuck thought it was all normal. At 9, he got up and said, "Time to head to the lake. Your dad texted me he'll be here in 5 minutes." Tom didn't notice the playful exchange of glances between Allie and her mom. Chuck brought out his fishing pole and tackle box and set them on the porch. Tom's dad, Hank, arrived in his old car with fishing gear on the roof. Allie and Sandra came out to wave goodbye. They arrived at the lake around 10 minutes after 10 and headed to the dock where Chuck's old boat was tied. Once they were all set, Hank asked, "Can someone explain what I saw this morning?" Chuck laughed. "Our household has always been relaxed about clothing. When my wife said she liked being unclothed at home, I didn't see a reason to argue. Allie was just raised to dress for comfort. Since we live far from the road, she rarely put on clothes unless she needed to." Hank replied, "That's very different from how we live." Chuck chuckled. "Not for me to judge. Anyway, you know Allie enjoyed being carefree after prom. Honestly, I was more worried about the drinking. Tom was fine with it, and his wife didn't mind either, so it seemed like they wanted to see how you would respond. They were joking around. Hank asked Chuck, "You don't mind other guys seeing your wife?" Chuck replied, "No. Just remember, soon we'll all be at Martin's and she will need to model." Hank nodded and turned to his son, Tom. "You really don't care who sees your wife?" Tom shook his head. "As long as no one gets too close. At Martin's, she'll be modeling a lot, and I trust her. I can't be overly strict in our marriage. Plus, I might have to do the same." Around 1 in the afternoon, Tom received a picture message from Allie. Her mom had sent a picture of Allie in a dressing room. She was wearing a white top and nothing else. The message asked, "Would this top look better in blue?" Another picture came next. This time it showed Allie in the same dressing room. The text asked, "Want to see what I did after this?" The following image showed her in a different pose at a display rack. Then there were a few unplanned pictures taken in the dressing room. The last picture showed Allie looking through a clothing rack. The message read, "We were asked to leave." When they got off the boat that afternoon, Hank turned to Tom. "Your mom wants a favor. Your cousin Phil is getting married, and you've been invited to the bachelor party." Tom sighed. "Let me guess. A party at the VFW with entertainment. I'm sure Allie will love that, no thanks." Hank replied, "This matters to your mom. It's not at the VFW hall, it's at Golden Bozo's. Phil is her sister's son, and it would mean a lot to her. Phil lost one of the groomsmen, and you need to step in." Tom said, "But my wife, Allie won't be happy about this." Hank added, "Your mom thought of that too. Allie is invited to the bride's bachelorette party the same night at mail delivery." Tom shook his head. "Not a good idea. 2 married people at separate clubs like that." "No thanks," Hank urged. "It's really important to your mom. Besides, she is asking Allie now." Tom sighed. "So we are being pressured." Hank replied, "Absolutely." Tom texted his wife, "Are you really being pushed by my mom and your mom to go to clubs? My dad is asking. What is going on?" Allie replied, "I caved in. I don't like it." Tom texted back, "If anything seems off at the club, you let me know. This is not a good idea." Allie said, "Tom, I'm loyal. I would never trade your heart for anything. I want what my mom has, a loving husband even after 20 years. She sent another text. "I'll be careful and will text if anything is wrong. Keep an eye on your messages that night." Allie and Sandra sat at the table, talking about what themes they should use for their photos. Tom walked by and asked, "What's happening?" Allie glanced at her mom and gave her a playful look. She got up as if to kiss him, but then playfully told him to sit down and take off his shirt while being with his wife. Tom sat down and said to her, "Only for you." She kissed him on the cheek and replied, "Good answer, because I'm the only one for you." She playfully asked, "So what themes will you have? What kind of fun pictures will my husband take?" Tom thought for a moment and said, "Open robe." Jennifer asked, "What do you mean?" Tom explained, "Women wearing an open robe with nothing underneath. I saw it in a movie once." Allie admitted, "Interesting, but not too much." "Not bad at all." Sandra added, "One eye." Allie asked, "What does that mean?" Sandra said, "Close-up of a male feature." Tom added, "And walking." Allie said, "You came up with those pretty quickly." Tom shrugged and said, "Seems safe. These poses won't get me in trouble with you." Allie laughed and said, "For me," but she didn't get a chance to finish her sentence. Sandra said, "Elephant." Allie asked, "What?" Sandra said, "I will create fake elephant ears with fabric and googly eyes. The trunk as well, you know." Allie laughed, "Only you, Mom." Anne surprised everyone by speaking up, saying, "One at a time, ballet body study." Sandra said, "That was fast." Anne smiled and said, "They sound creative and it's easy to think of places to do them." Sandra suggested, "One theme for women, working woman." Allie said, "For me, sports, ballet no dance, and near a tree." On a Sunday morning, Allie woke up next to Tom, smiled, and cuddled him. She said, "Tom, I saw a ring at the mall yesterday that I really liked. Can we go get it?" Tom was thinking about a more expensive ring and paused. She reassured him, "It was only $10, Tom." He hugged her tightly, giving a silent "ah yes." After breakfast and a relaxing morning, Tom drove to the mall with Allie. They walked inside to get the ring from a kiosk at the center of the mall. As they passed the usual stores, they noticed a booth set up with artists. They both did a double take. In one booth, there was a woman getting a design painted on her. She looked to be in her mid-30s and had an ordinary face. A painted shirt was almost finished. Allie stopped and looked at the artist, then turned to Tom, who laughed and said, "Go ahead." Allie smiled, embracing this new experience. She approached the booth, where a friendly woman in her early 30s greeted her, saying, "Hello! Would you like to volunteer for a fun project? It supports the Indy North Food Bank." At the event, Allie listened as the organizer explained, "Every volunteer helps us raise more funds. Each volunteer means a $250 donation from MovieMax, and we'll get food supplies at wholesale prices, too." The woman then shared the plan. "We'll paint a fake top on you, and then you'll go shopping wearing it. It's straightforward," she said with a smile. Allie agreed and signed a brief release form, acknowledging that her image would be used for promotional purposes and that she might run into people she knew. Shortly after, a man named Tony approached, asking if she would appear in a video for a special segment about the event. He explained that if she agreed, MovieMax would increase its donation to $750 and throw in a few gift cards. Allie nodded, and Tom spoke up with a friendly condition. "We'd love a copy of the videos and the final program." Tony chuckled. "That's doable," he said, then handed them another form to sign. The team set up a small booth for Allie, placing lights to ensure good coverage without overwhelming her. Nearby, another volunteer's painted shirt was completed, and a few publicity shots were taken before she moved on to shop. Before getting started, Allie turned to Tom. "Take plenty of pictures so I can remember this," she said cheerfully. Tom agreed, knowing the event crew would handle the video while he focused on still shots. Once everything was ready, Allie grinned at Tom, excitement in her eyes. "Here goes nothing," she said, pulling off her t-shirt with a laugh. She handed it to Tom, who tucked it safely away as she prepared for the paint design. Allie chose a white lace pattern for her faux shirt and shared a quick, playful whisper with the artist, both smiling at the fun of it all. The artist began painting on her back, just as Allie requested. Allie enjoyed the unique experience, embracing the event's lively atmosphere and raising awareness for a good cause. Tom had taken 248 pictures when the woman finally revealed her top. He looked at his wife, who was clearly enjoying herself. He said to her, "You really love this. She could hardly contain her excitement. I discovered a part of myself, and I love it. I love this side of me. Tom heard a text light up on Allie's phone. He read it to her. Emily said, "Naughty girl." He smiled. "Seeing you happy makes me happy. Funny how that works." She shook her head. "No, it's not funny at all. When I said I own a piece of your heart, I meant it. My joy and your joy are connected. That's why I will always hold on to that place. I am in your heart. There is no Allie and no Tom, it's Tom and Allie. That's why I changed all my identification so soon after we got married. It's not just you or me, it's us." 40 minutes later, the shirt was finished. By this point, Tom had taken 412 pictures. Tony said, "One of our video teams will follow you for a bit, but not all day. I would like your number for periodic updates and some videos during the day. Here's a $50 gift card for Claire's, a $20 gift card for Candle House, and a $50 gift card for Silvermania Jewelry." Allie apologized. "Sorry, your day will be mostly shopping at the mall." He laughed. "Seeing how much fun you're having makes it worth it. You without a top makes it even better." Allie playfully wiggled her shoulders at him. They had started to walk away when Allie's phone pinged with a text. Allie read it and said, "Emily wants us to go to the worm booth." When they arrived, they saw Emily with Bryce. Emily noticed Tom's confused look and said, "Tom, Bryce and I are just good friends. After my little adventure, I realized it's better to be with someone I know. I don't regret what happened, but I'm not doing that again." Tom gave her a stern look. Bryce added, "Tom, relax. She took the chance when it came. We didn't have any promises other than the date, which I'm fine with. Our lives are heading in different directions. We're just friends, and I enjoy that." Tom nodded and laughed. "I guess that place was something else." Bryce agreed. "I won't take a wife or date there again. That place isn't for serious relationships." Emily walked up to the booth and signed a document. Then Tony approached her. Emily agreed to be part of the special. She smiled, her pretty face framed by her long, light strawberry blonde hair. Allie took pictures as Emily unbuttoned her blouse and revealed her top before getting ready to model a new crop top. Allie encouraged Tom to keep taking pictures. Tom was confused. Allie rolled her eyes and said, "When we get to Martin's, you're going to see and take pictures of a lot of women in swimsuits. Just don't touch anything, and I'm happy. I have my own things to see, too. My focus is on women. We're sending the photos to Emily, and I want them in my collection." Tom sighed and took pictures of a shirt being painted for Emily. He said, "I'll never understand women." Allie turned to Emily and said, "I'll have Tom send you your pictures." Once Emily's painted shirt was finished, they posed for several pictures together while the radio station filmed them. The cameraman from Movie Max was walking backward, recording everything. Allie took Tom's hand but was mostly chatting with Emily about which stores they wanted to visit. Their first stop was a kiosk selling a silver ring. Just as promised, the ring was small and cost only $10. After buying it, Tom occasionally took pictures. Next, they went to a shoe store. Tom sighed, feeling a bit out of place, but this was now a shopping adventure for his wife and her friend. They browsed the store while a surprised young saleswoman tried to show them different styles of sandals. Neither woman planned on buying anything, but they were enjoying the adventure. After that, they went to Sports Shoes, a shop with various sneakers and sports shoes. This time, 3 young men were eager to help the women. Allie smiled at Emily as they enjoyed the attention. They looked through almost every shoe in the women's section but stayed mindful of their space. Allie noticed that the video crew was still with them. They passed by a jewelry store, and the owner called out, "Would you like to try on some nice items? You can wear them, and I get some good publicity." Allie and Emily spent the next half hour trying on expensive jewelry while Tom took pictures and the video crew filmed. After leaving the jewelry store, Allie looked at Tom and said with a playful grin, "All this shopping makes me hungry." Tom checked his phone as they walked out of the store and said, "I've taken 962 pictures." Allie smiled and said, "More for our first photo collection together." Emily turned to Bryce and asked, "And how many do you have for me?" Bryce replied, 470. Once they reached the food court, they headed to Chicken Meister and picked grilled chicken sandwiches. Tom reviewed the pictures on his phone and showed Allie some of his favorite shots. Allie smiled. The photos captured the fun she was having. Tom remarked, You're having a great time, aren't you? Allie nodded, beaming with joy. After lunch, they stopped at Macy's and looked through the shoe section. They didn't find anything but managed to take a dozen pictures. Then they went to the women's section to try on some shorts. Allie posed in several pairs of shorts, enjoying the moment. They were looking for fun and took a lot of pictures, but Allie ended up buying one pair of earrings that were half off. Next to the entrance of Macy's was Candle House. Allie used her gift card to buy scented candles for their room, treating themselves to something special that they usually wouldn't. They then took a break at the food court, enjoying bottled water while Allie admired her new top. As the afternoon went on, they finished their water and headed to Claire's, where Allie picked out several pairs of silver earrings. After that, they visited Silvermania for a few more pairs. By the time they finished shopping, there was only half an hour left before the mall closed. They stopped by the Worm booth for some last photos and to say goodbye to Emily and Bryce. As they left the mall, Allie kissed Tom on the cheek, still wearing her new top. She said, "Thank you. I had a wonderful day today. Thanks for being so patient, and I will find a way to show you my appreciation tonight." Friday, June 2nd, 2017. It was their high school graduation, and families walked into the ceremony held outside in the warm, late spring air. Tom kissed both of their mothers and gave his fathers a friendly hug, and Allie did the same. The parents took out their phones, snapping many pictures of them both together and separately. Allie smiled at Tom and said, "I love you, Tom. This is another great moment for us, and I'm so happy to share it with you." After the pictures, it was time to go to the waiting area for graduation. Tom held Allie's hand as they walked to the lineup, with Allie standing right in front of Tom. With over 1,200 students, they were organized in a strict order to cross the stage, receive their diplomas, and move on. The ceremony started, and they lined up accordingly. Tom and Allie were in the third group of 50 students. When their group was called, Allie stood in front of Tom, waiting to take her diploma. The principal on stage called out, "Madison Callis," and the girl in front of Allie walked to the stage. Allie smiled back at Tom and said, "This is it." Then the principal called, "Allie Calvert." Allie walked confidently to the stage. Tom felt proud as he watched her accept her diploma and walk back down the other side. After that, the principal called out, "Thomas Calvert," and Tom took his turn. Allie greeted him at the bottom of the stairs with a warm hug and a sweet kiss. There was a short reception after everyone received their diplomas, with a huge number of students making it crowded. Allie took off her graduation robe to reveal her dress, which was black with a V-neck and sturdy straps. The dress was quite short, and everyone around them could see how stylish she looked. Her outfit was slightly revealing. Allie playfully danced and encouraged Tom to take some photos. Tom glanced at his diploma, which noted his ranking as 8th out of 1204. He then looked at Allie's diploma, which showed her rank as 11th out of 1204. When they got home, a small celebration was planned with both their parents. On the kitchen table, 2 cameras were placed, one for Tom and one for Allie. Both families smiled and said, "These are for your upcoming photography classes." These were the only gifts for the evening, cherished by the families. Saturday, June 3rd, 2017. Tom entered Golden Bozo's at 7 that night, just as Allie stepped into mail delivery. He searched for his cousin while a dancer entertained the crowd. Tom sighed, wishing they would hire more appealing performers. He spotted his cousin among a group of men. A dancer approached and asked what he would like. He requested a drink of water, thinking that at least she was more natural-looking. Allie walked into mail delivery and saw 2 stages, each featuring fit and attractive men. They were displaying themselves to the audience, but she felt uncomfortable with the atmosphere. A charming man approached her, asking, "Is there a party I can show you to?" Allie admitted to herself that while the view was nice, something felt off. She smiled and replied, "The Van Garten party." He smiled back and took her to a group of women who seemed to have been drinking. A lovely woman in a black dress and a bride crown was playfully pouring a drink from a bottle into a novelty container, aiming it at herself. She noticed Allie and said, "You must be Allie, Tom's wife. I'm Hannah. Welcome." Hannah handed Allie a fun drink container, urging her, "Go ahead! It's bring your own drinks here!" Allie took a couple of small sips and then playfully squirted some under Hannah's chair when she wasn't paying attention. It looked like it would be a long night. Another woman nearby, who seemed a bit tipsy, introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Sarah." Allie gave a friendly smile. "Allie." Sarah asked, "What does your husband think about all this?" Allie shrugged. "He's not a fan, but he's at the bachelor party, so I guess we both have our places tonight. What about your—" She noticed Sarah wasn't wearing any rings and asked, "What does your partner think about this?" Sarah replied, "We broke up 2 months ago, so I'm just here to enjoy myself." Sarah leaned a little too far and nearly toppled off her chair. It was clear that she had drunk too much. Allie sighed and thought, what a long night. She secretly poured more vodka out under Hannah's chair. A dancer approached and moved in front of Allie, getting too close for comfort. He was handsome, but she felt overwhelmed. Allie took out $1, gave it to him, and pointed to Hannah, saying, "Bride." The dancer switched his focus and danced for Hannah instead. Another dancer came up to Sarah, who handed him a $5. She cheered as he danced for her. At 7:20, Tom texted Allie, asking, "You okay?" Allie replied, "Sort of. They are trying to get me drunk. I'm pouring vodka on the floor. The bride handed me a squirt gun shaped like a funny toy and keeps filling it with vodka. I take a small sip now and then to pretend I'm drinking. I paid 2 dancers to dance near Hannah." Tom texted back, "Don't get too close, but enjoy the performance. Just keep pouring out the vodka. Have fun, but stay mindful. I won't worry unless you get too close. The dancers here aren't great. You have it better than what I'm seeing, just some topless dancers who look really fake. Not impressive." Allie responded, "That's not true." Tom wrote, "There was one cute waitress, but the dancers aren't attractive." Allie replied, "Just enjoy your show, don't get too close." Tom texted, "Maybe if they had someone who looked more natural." Allie texted, "The guys are nice to look at, but they stare at us like we're easy targets. One dancer seemed to be checking me out. He looked good, though." Tom replied, "Just enjoy the view. I'm okay." Allie texted, "No touching." Tom texted, "I'm fine, really." Then another dancer came out. Tom sighed. The next dancer was pretty, but had very large, clearly fake features. This one had red hair and quickly took off her top, trying to impress the crowd, but it didn't look natural. Tom sighed again. By 7:30, Allie was still mostly sober and working to keep the vodka hidden under Hannah's chair. She thought about how much vodka she might have wasted, but reminded herself to stay in control. The after-prom party was supposed to be fun, but she felt a bit lost tonight without Tom watching out for her. At 7:45, the announcer at the club said, "Tonight at 8, we will have our bi-weekly amateur night." As 8 o'clock approached, 9 women lined up on stage. 3 were clearly experienced dancers in revealing outfits. 2 seemed really nervous, 2 looked a bit anxious, and 2 appeared confident. At the event, Tom noticed a mix of professional performers and amateur participants, all taking the stage for the club's amateur night. One woman, clearly new to performing, seemed nervous but managed to step up with confidence, which Tom admired. The announcer called out, "Coming up at 8, we have our bi-weekly amateur night, don't miss it." By 8 o'clock, Allie had enjoyed a few drinks and was watching the scene unfold, clapping along to the music but keeping her distance. She noticed the lively atmosphere and the enthusiastic crowd. A tall, well-built dancer came over to perform near her, moving with great energy. She handed him a small tip and laughed, playfully asking him to give her a little more space. He obliged, dancing back and forth to keep her entertained without getting too close. She smiled and clapped, appreciating the fun energy. While Allie enjoyed the performance, Tom texted her saying, "It's amateur night, wish you could join in." Allie replied, "I think I'd like that. Are you okay with it?" Tom responded, "As long as we make sure it's all planned out, I'd be happy for you to join. I'll let you know how it goes." Allie replied with a grin, "Sounds like fun. Are the amateurs better than the pros?" Tom texted back, "Honestly, the amateurs bring a lot of energy. It's a mixed crowd, but they're more fun to watch. Next amateur night is in 2 weeks. It's a relaxed environment here." Allie smiled, replying, "Enjoy the show. The atmosphere here is pretty lively too. I tipped a dancer to give me a bit more space to enjoy the view, and he got the hint." She added, "Oops, getting the side eye from someone here for texting too much." The first performer of the night appeared to be an experienced dancer, taking a more practiced approach. Next up was a young redhead in a formal gown, looking both excited and a bit shy. She started her dance gracefully, and even with a few hesitant moves, her performance had a natural charm that stood out to the crowd. The next performer was a woman in a bikini, who came out to an upbeat song with a light-hearted energy. Though her performance was simple, it had a unique, relaxed feel that the audience appreciated, adding to the fun of the evening. Natural acts were more pleasant to see than the fake ones. She performed her 3-minute song and then left for the next performer. The next contestant was also a bit nervous. She was a pretty blonde with hair that reached her shoulders, about 30 years old. She wore a black bikini that revealed quite a bit of her figure but was a bit more covered on top. She walked to the front of the stage as her song played. When she reached the front, she revealed more of herself. From the crowd, it sounded like one of the men was her husband, saying, "Love you, honey, you look amazing." This guess was confirmed when she walked right to him after her performance and gave him a warm kiss. The show continued for about 45 minutes, wrapping up just before 9. The judges raised their hands over each woman in turn. Tom sighed, noticing that the audience was more excited about the performers with the fake enhancements. Tom texted his wife, "Still having fun?" Allie replied, "Yeah, feeling pretty good now. I've paid for a few dances. I wish they would stay back so I can just enjoy the view. Some of the dancers are just dancing." Tom wrote back, "The amateurs went first. The ones who were just starting lost. All 3 top spots went to the women with the fake ones." The announcer said, "Now our performers will be available for private dances if they choose." Tom turned to his friends saying, "So now the amateurs will be giving private dances." Allie asked, "Are you going to get one?" Tom texted, "Is that all right with you?" Allie replied, "Just no touching, but yes if you don't touch." Tom looked around. The woman with the act-up breasts seemed to have few people approaching her. Tom texted Allie, "I'll give her $10. She isn't getting much attention. She has a lovely face, a pretty smile, and nice hair." Allie replied, "Only you would notice that. Seriously, be good to her. She seems brave. Treat her kindly, but keep it respectful." After 4 private dances with the AQ-up woman, Tom waved a $10 bill at her. She looked a bit nervous. Tom smiled and said, "Relax, I'm easygoing." She smiled back. Looking closely, he noticed she looked about 25 years old. Up close, her face and hair were even more striking. She introduced herself, "I'm Amber." Tom returned the smile. "I won't be overwhelming. I'm Tom, here for a bachelor party. My wife is across town at a bachelorette party. I told her you were cute and brave, and she thinks you are just brave, so she suggested I ask you for a dance." Amber looked surprised and said, "Your wife?" Tom nodded. "Yep. We are heading to Martin's University where we will be part of an art program. This means we will be around a lot of people and we need to be honest with each other. We talked about rules and set our own boundaries. I have to keep my hands at my sides." Tom handed her a $10 bill. Amber smiled and gave him a playful dance. When she got a bit too close, he gently moved away. Amber then adjusted her position and sat in his lap. Amber stayed there and playfully moved a little, saying, "At least someone appreciates me. Your wife must feel secure." Tom showed her some text messages on his phone. She looked surprised and asked, "Do you think I have a pretty face?" Tom was taken aback and replied, "Of course, you're very pretty." Amber stood up and her eyes started to water. Tom texted his wife, "I think I said the wrong thing. She's getting upset. All I said was she's pretty." His wife quickly responded, "Then apologize and comfort her. Use your brain." Tom replied, "She's only wearing a little bit. It's sheer, and I can see everything." His wife shot back, "Comfort her, but don't invade her space. You made her upset. Fix it." Tom stood up and said, "I'm sorry if I upset you. I didn't mean to. I'm just a bit confused." Amber looked at him and started to softly cry. A security guard approached. Tom sighed. Amber wanted comfort, and Tom was there for her. She stepped forward and hugged him. Tom kept his hands at his sides as she quietly shook. Tom glanced at the guard, who took a relaxed stance and said, "She's upset, but please don't get us in trouble. Just be careful." After a moment, Amber calmed down and said, Sorry, it wasn't you. My divorce was final 2 weeks ago. He left me for someone younger. I thought this would help my confidence, but it didn't work. Tom nodded, relieved. I'm glad I didn't do anything wrong. Amber smiled weakly and said, It's just hard to feel attractive when someone leaves for someone else. You clearly care about your wife. That really got to me. Why couldn't I marry a guy like you? Tom nodded again. You do know you're pretty, right? Amber replied. I guess. Just then, Tom's phone buzzed and he checked it, laughing. The text read, Did you fix it? Tom sighed. My wife is asking about you. Amber grabbed the phone and began to text, and they continued this for the next 10 minutes. Tom looked at the messages. Amber introduced herself and mentioned that Tom was a true gentleman. He offered her comfort and did not make any inappropriate attempts. By the end of their conversation, they had exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet for lunch the next day. Tom looked at Amber and said, My wife just became friends with a woman who made quite an impression on me. Amber laughed and nodded. She thinks very highly of you. Amber sat next to Tom and they chatted about everyday things. Tom listened as she shared her story about discovering her husband's unfaithfulness and her subsequent divorce. He just listened to her sad story, and she soon forgot that she felt exposed. Tom received a text from his wife and looked concerned. At 9:30, Allie was feeling tipsy. Though she was not stumbling, she recognized the sensation from after prom night. Hannah stood up and exclaimed, It's time for the fun room. Allie followed the women into a room at the back with a slightly open door. Steam hovered in the air, partially hiding the view inside. The room was about 15 feet on each side, with a faux leather bench around the edges. Allie took a seat near the right side, joining the other women. 2 performers entered and started to entertain. Another performer went from woman to woman. When one performer came in front of Allie, she felt uncomfortable. She quickly handed a $5 bill to Hannah and said, For the bride. 20 minutes later, Allie had become quite tipsy as the drinks took effect. She watched as Sarah interacted with one of the entertainers. Another 2 performers arrived, and one caught Allie's eye. He seemed to be looking her over, but then turned to entertain someone else. Allie was just sober enough to realize this wasn't a good scene for her. It took a moment for her to come up with a plan. Tom received a text that said, Need you here now? He got up, showed the text to Amber, and left. 20 minutes later, Tom arrived at the front of the club and texted, I'm here. He didn't see Allie and started to worry. It took 5 minutes before Allie came out, a little unsteady, and got into the car. Tom asked, What happened? Allie replied, We went to a back room. When things started getting out of hand, I decided it wasn't for me. I went to the bathroom and sent you that text from there. Tom smiled, kissed his wife, and said, I'm so proud of you. You recognized a hazard to our marriage and took action to stay safe. You are a wonderful and loyal wife. Allie responded, You hold the center of my heart, forever. Saturday, June 3rd, 2017. Tom parked the car and carried his wife into the house just before midnight. Chuck and Sandra looked up and saw Tom carrying Allie. Chuck asked, Is she drunk again? Allie raised her hand and said, I had to join in a little. You should have seen how much vodka I poured out on the ground. Allie pulled out a squirt gun from her bag and showed it to them. The bride kept filling it with vodka while I emptied it. I would take a sip and then spray some on the floor while everyone was watching the dancers. Tom said, Be proud of her. Things got wild later and she handled it well. Allie nodded. One of the women at the party, Sarah, started acting inappropriately in a back room. I decided to leave and hid in the bathroom to text Tom to come get me. Tom kissed her on the cheek and said, My loyal, if a bit tipsy, wife. Allie smiled and cuddled closer. Sandra remarked, Looks like Sarah will be single soon. Allie shook her head. She is single already. She broke up with her boyfriend a few months ago. I just didn't like how things were going, and most of the women were pretty tipsy. Tom sighed and said, Time for bed for her. Suddenly, Allie felt sick. Tom sighed again as Allie had just gotten sick all over them both again. Allie said, I can't handle my drinks. Sorry. Tom laughed. You're the only person I'll let get sick on me. You were great. You saw a problem and got out of there. I'm proud to have you as my wife. Allie wrinkled her nose, smiled, and said, We need to shower. Tom helped Allie into the bathroom. He placed her on the toilet seat while he took off his clothes. He put her dress in the sink and filled it with water, hoping it could be saved. He stepped into the shower with Allie and kissed her on the cheek, knowing she needed to freshen up first. He gently cleaned her face, and she enjoyed his soft touch. Sandra came in and sat on the toilet seat, watching them. Allie shrugged and said, "That's all I saw. I left when I thought things were getting out of control." She leaned slightly and continued, "Sarah was the only one misbehaving when I left, but I'm glad I left because I wouldn't have liked to see a married woman acting that way. That would be tough knowing someone deceived you and then having to see that person again. Keeping a secret or being the one to tell the truth creates a big burden." Tom chuckled. "My mother-in-law's on the phone with my wife while I'm helping her in the shower." Sandra shrugged. "Tom, we've seen each other many times. There is no real privacy in this house except in a closed bedroom. I wanted to hear more of the story, but it seems there isn't anything else to know. Plus, what's happening in that shower is actually quite sweet. You are helping your wife after she had a bit too much to drink. You are caring for her, and that is a lovely thing." Sandra laughed. "Did you even realize what you just did?" Tom shrugged. Sandra continued, "You helped her in a very personal way. She was talking to me in a friendly way, even though she was a bit tipsy. She let you get close without hesitation. That trust is something special. She feels safe with you, and that is beautiful. You treated her gently and with care." Sandra smiled warmly at him. "She really trusts you. Thank you for giving her the happy marriage she always wanted." Allie gave him a kiss on the cheek and gave him a side hug, though a bit wobbly. Tom turned off the water and dried Allie with a towel. He asked Sandra to help hold her for a moment. After drying himself, he took Allie to their room. He tucked her into bed and joined her. Once settled, Allie snuggled against him, resting her cheek on his shoulder and quickly falling asleep. Sunday, June 4th, 2017. Tom woke up at 7:30 with Allie still cuddled beside him. She stirred, rubbed her cheek against his shoulder, and then relaxed again. That cozy feeling never got old. Tom turned to hug her tightly. She hugged him back, opened her eyes, and said, "Good morning." Their eyes met, and his deep love for her sparkled back. She sighed happily. It felt great to forget about the troubles of the night before, including turning down the charming Tyler Jensen, thanks to the warmth of Tom's love. She shifted to the edge of the bed as he sat up and playfully took his hand, leading him to the bathroom and handing him a toothbrush. Tom asked, "How are you feeling?" Allie replied, "A little headache, but not too bad. It wasn't as crazy as at the after-prom." A moment later, she leaned in and kissed him, making it a joyful greeting. "Good morning." They headed back into their room where Allie playfully lay back, looking relaxed. She softly whispered, "Let's have some cuddles." Tom loved how Allie expressed her feelings so clearly. There was no guessing at all. Tom lay on top of Allie, kissing her gently. As they kissed, Allie felt a warm thrill. She enjoyed this closeness and the feeling of his body against hers. It made her feel special. After a while, Tom's phone beeped with a text message. He didn't pay attention to it and relaxed with Allie resting partially on his chest. Then the phone rang. Tom saw it was his mom calling. His mom said, "Tom, what happened last night? Phil called off the engagement." Tom reacted with surprise. "Oh, no." Allie noticed and moved a bit closer. Tom replied, "I'm not sure, but maybe Allie can explain." He handed the phone to Allie. His mom asked, "Allie, what happened last night?" Allie explained, "I left early. We were at a private party and things were getting out of hand. One of the guests started acting inappropriately and I decided to leave. I texted Tom to come get me. His mom said, 'I encouraged you to go. I'm so sorry.' Allie reassured her, 'I left before anything went wrong. Tom and I are good.' His mom replied, 'But I sent you there. I feel terrible about this.' Allie said, 'Mom, everything is fine. I left before anything inappropriate happened. We are happy together.' Tom was surprised by how straightforward Allie was about their relationship. She thought intimacy was something for married couples to enjoy fully. Growing up in a house where her mother openly discussed such matters had influenced her. After some more conversation, Allie gave the phone back to Tom. "Mom, everything is all right. Allie showed she is a devoted wife. She recognized the situation and stepped away." It took a few more minutes to finish the call. Tom texted his cousin Phil. "I heard you ended things." Phil replied with links and just one word. "Why?" Tom clicked the first link. It led to a video showing the scene he feared. He saw Sarah behaving inappropriately, and shortly after, Allie left the room. The video continued, and more guests were seen doing things that could hurt their relationships. Tom noticed that a couple of women with rings on their fingers looked uncomfortable, shared glances, and left. In the next video, the situation escalated further, and Tom fast-forwarded to the end, where many women were crossing lines that jeopardized their commitments. He felt uneasy watching part of what had transpired. Allie took a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. Tom gave her an encouraging smile. "You handled that so well. I'm really proud of you." Allie managed a small smile, though she still felt uncertain. But those connections from the past, they're gone. Only a couple of friendships remained before trust was broken. If there's one video out there, others may have copies. Tom thought for a moment. Whoever shared it may not have thought it through either. You can view more if you want, but I think I'll skip the next links. He paused. I wonder who actually recorded them. Allie shrugged, thinking back. Honestly, I don't remember everyone who was nearby back then. She shook her head, deciding to move forward. Let's skip it. Amber's coming over for lunch soon anyway. You've been officially dismissed, she added playfully. Amber and I are going to relax and probably talk about how lucky I am to have you. With that, Tom left to join Chuck in the living room where Sandra was chatting. Chuck looked up as Tom entered. Hey, want to go fishing? Just down the road at the river? It sounds like you've been temporarily kicked out. Tom chuckled. Seems I have. Allie invited Amber over, so it's probably best I give them some space. Chuck laughed in agreement. Let's go. We've got a few hours. I'll need to be back by 4. After their fishing trip, Tom returned to find Allie and Amber relaxing in the backyard, enjoying the sunny afternoon. Allie waved and laughed. We're just getting some sun. Amber and I took some pictures of me. I'm thinking about putting together a photo book for you, capturing different memories we've made. They all laughed and spent the afternoon enjoying a peaceful moment together. Later, Sandra came out with a pitcher of iced tea and asked Tom, Could you grab us some Chick-fil-A for dinner? Tom agreed, heading out for their order. About 40 minutes later, Tom returned with bags of food, ready for a backyard picnic. As he walked over to set the food down, Amber playfully took the bags from him, and just as he was about to sit, Allie pulled a light-hearted prank, tugging at his pants with a laugh. Tom, momentarily surprised, stumbled back, laughing as well. The group enjoyed the laughter and light-hearted moments, all in good fun. The family picnic continued with jokes, stories, and a relaxed atmosphere, everyone simply enjoying each other's company as the sun began to set, wrapping up the day with smiles and warm memories. Tom and Allie shared a warm, quiet moment together, her love and affection for him clear in her eyes. She looked at him with a deep admiration and said softly, I love you so much. It's hard to even put into words. Tom smiled, a little surprised by her openness. Earlier, Allie and her mom had been encouraging their friend Amber, talking about finding trust and love in relationships. They shared stories of loyalty, with Allie even recalling a time she'd chosen Tom over someone else, emphasizing how deeply she valued him. These memories left her feeling especially close to Tom, who had always been there for her. As they headed back inside together, they enjoyed a quiet, comforting moment, cherishing their bond. They took their time, enjoying the stillness of the room and appreciating each other's presence. Later, they rejoined the group outside, where Sandra welcomed them with a smile and a laugh, noting how much Allie and Tom reminded her of her own relationship with Chuck. She shared a light-hearted story from years back, laughing about the playful spirit she and Chuck had brought to a party with friends long ago, reminding Allie that love can have its fun and silly moments. Allie smiled, feeling grateful for the loving family and close friends around her. The evening continued with laughter, stories, and simple moments that brought everyone closer together, creating memories filled with warmth and joy. I felt really sore the next day, but I had pushed him so much that he couldn't keep going after that. You sit there proudly, even while things aren't perfect. I know that feeling too. That night I didn't mind that others were watching me with Chuck. I love him even more now than I did then. Sweetheart, 18 years ago, I held a baby girl and hoped she would find a partner she deeply wanted. I never held back with your father when I was expressing my love at night. I hope to teach you to embrace love fully with your special person. I wanted that passionate love to be part of your life. And now it is. Your love for him is beautiful, and you should never feel embarrassed about it. I see the joy in your face when you look at him. I notice the strong feelings in your eyes. That's lovely. Wanting your partner is a natural thing to feel. Allie replied, but doing it in front of others feels strange. Sandra looked at her and said, what in your life feels normal? Just be yourself. Be the ally you want to be and never be ashamed of it. Love Tom in the way that feels right for you. Allie asked, did you ever do that again? Being open in front of others? Sandra shook her head. I have experienced that once. It's a cherished memory for me, and I look back on it with happiness. Allie kissed Tom softly and said, I love you from the very bottom of my heart. I truly love you. Changing the topic, Allie looked at Tom and said, by the way, Amber is our first model for our photography project at Martin's University. She volunteered. Your encouragement last night helped her regain her self-confidence, and now she wants to model for us. Next Saturday at 11, she'll be with us for 4 hours if we provide her lunch. Allie added, this reminds me, I want to start modeling for life drawing classes, but I want to make sure you're okay with that. Tom smiled and said, I love showing you off. Allie replied, tonight, after a few cozy moments together, I will start looking. You will stick around, right? Maybe take the class while I pose? Tom nodded. He was good at drawing, but not at the same level as Allie. At 6:30, a BMW X5 rolled into the driveway while Tom was helping clean up after lunch. 3 men got out of the car and Tom asked, how can I help you? One man introduced himself. I'm Cal, and these are my friends Ben and Nick. Tom replied, I'm Tom. What brings you here? Cal said, we heard you got some links to videos. Our wives were at the gathering last night. Tom felt uneasy. He noticed that all 3 men looked upset. He noticed that the others looked uneasy when he made a pained expression. Tom asked, what do you need? Cal replied, tell us if our wives were unfaithful. Tom was surprised. What do you mean? Cal explained, someone sent links to those videos from the bachelorette party to the husbands. We don't want to watch them, but your cousin said you might have access. Did our wives betray us? Tom said, I saw 2 women leave. One was blonde, the other had dark brown hair. I don't remember anything else. Allie walked through the room casually, catching everyone's attention. The men turned to Tom, looking confused. Cal said, sorry to hear about your wife's behavior. Tom shook his head and said, she hasn't done anything wrong. She just prefers not to wear clothes. It's not a big deal and I don't get jealous. She even said no to someone before he passed away. Ben chimed in, I would never get involved with someone else's partner. Allie approached and asked, what's happening? Tom put his arm around her and explained, Allie was there last night. He turned to his wife and added, these are the husbands of 3 women from the party. Allie looked concerned and said, I was the first one to leave. I know 2 others went as well. We saw the first 2 videos, but we didn't watch the others. Cal took out a $100 bill and said, would you watch it? Tom asked, what do you mean? Cal replied, I'll pay you $100 to watch. I need to know if she was unfaithful before I talk to my wife. The other men nodded in agreement. Cal pulled up a picture of his wife. She was a pretty blonde. Ben and Nick showed pictures of their wives, both with dark brown hair. Allie looked at Tom, who nodded. Allie then said, we'll help you. You don't need to pay us. Cal insisted, I know you could use the money and I earn more than enough. Allie shook her head. Helping you is the right thing. We don't want your money. Allie led the men into the house where Sandra was sitting at the kitchen table with Chuck, also casually dressed. The 3 men were surprised as Sandra shrugged and smiled. Allie explained, I need to borrow the table. These men want to know if their wives were unfaithful at the party last night. Tom and I will watch the videos and take notes to see if anyone behaved inappropriately. Allie went to their room and came back with her laptop, asking Tom to send the links. She opened the videos and created notes on her laptop. Tom and Allie sat in front of the 3 men, keeping the screen turned away from them. As the second video began, Allie felt tears welling in her eyes. The three men sitting across from them seemed uneasy. Tom typed. 30 seconds later, he typed again. The men shifted in their seats. After the third video, Allie was in tears against Tom's shirt. With a tight jaw, Tom continued to type quietly. When he finished, a crying Allie looked up and asked, "What do we do now?" Cal said, "Just tell us. I'm about to lose my mind." Allie wiped her tears and turned to Tom, saying, "I can't. You do it." Tom glanced at Ben and said, "To be sure." He described each woman carefully, knowing this news was going to be hard to hear. Tom looked at Ben and said, "I'm sorry." Ben's face filled with pain as he asked, "How bad is it?" Tom replied, "I can't take it back now." Ben said, "I don't want to see the video, just tell me." Tom turned off the videos and faced the computer toward them. Each notepad had a name at the top and a brief note about each wife won for Cal, Ben, and Nick. Cal and Nick's notepads both said, "Nothing." One of the two women left early. Nick let out a deep breath. Cal looked relieved. They both turned to look at Ben's notepad. Video 1? Nothing. Note. Everyone is drunk. Video 2:030 pulls down dress 055, dancer with blonde hair, 1:25, blonde dancer 3:45, dark-haired dancer video 30:45 scene with dark-haired dancer video 40:05, dark-haired dancer expresses pleasure. No protection 0:25 scene with different blonde dancer. 4:50 blonde dancer expresses pleasure. No protection. Allie was still crying. Tom looked at Ben and said again, "I'm sorry." Cal and Nick supported a devastated Ben to their car. Cal returned to the porch, gave Tom his email and said, "Email me Ben's report. I'll send it to him." Cal asked, "Did my wife really leave early?" Allie nodded and said softly, "Be proud of her. She left as soon as it seemed things were going wrong." Cal let out a long breath and said, "After I drop off Ben, I'm going to get my wife some flowers." Allie smiled and said, "Tell her about the others whose marriages are struggling and how proud you are of her for staying true. She will appreciate that." Cal nodded, saying, "I'm taking her out for dinner." Allie replied, "That sounds great. Many women face temptation, and some more than you know. Yours walked away from it without a second thought." Cal smiled, but his expression turned neutral as he walked back to the car. He didn't want to boast to his friend about his situation. Allie was still teary-eyed. Tom comforted her. After a few minutes, Allie felt better. Tom wrapped his arm around his devoted wife and said, "Your loyalty is why my day is not like Ben's." Allie kissed him and said, "That was hard for me." Tom nodded. "I wasn't going to lie. Wondering would have been much worse." I shared some good news with two men, but I wasn't thrilled to tell Ben. Allie paused, looked at me and said, "Let's set a new rule for our marriage. No visiting strip clubs unless the other person is there. That's it. If I have to go to a male show for a bachelorette party, you will come with me." Allie continued, "I don't think it will happen, but if I do go, you will be there, especially if your mom convinces me. I don't care what people think. You are my partner, my support, and I will be there if you go to a female show." Tom agreed, saying, "My mom will never ask you to come, though." Allie laughed at the idea of Tom going to see a male performance. "I can picture you sitting there, so uncomfortable." Tom frowned. "That's not funny." Allie laughed harder. "Oh, yes, it is. It's very funny." She calmed down a bit, still grinning, and said, "Love you." Tom responded, "Love you too." Later that evening, Allie was propped up in bed, feeling close to Tom. She grabbed her phone and showed it to him, pointing to Patterson Art College life models. Tom nodded and asked, "Only in a classroom, right?" Allie sighed. "I want to pose privately, too." Tom replied, "I'm not comfortable with you being alone around artists at private events. Most are nice, but there are a few who aren't great." After thinking a moment, Allie suggested, "What if I ask you about each event beforehand, and if you're free, you can come with me? I promise to check with you first. I love this new side of me and being seen by others." Tom considered it and said, "Only because I care about you so much and you keep showing how wonderful you are." "Okay, but only if I'm with you for any private posing." Allie smiled and said, "Deal." He paused for a moment and added, "Maybe I should just call you Loyal Allie." Allie liked that. I am loyal. You have no idea how happy I feel every morning when I see how much you love me. All you want is for me to love you back, and that's an easy choice for me. Tom asked, "Why are you so interested in private posing now?" Allie explained, "I read about some private events where models were in amazing places. One woman posed in a beautiful old mansion all day, and another at a lovely garden. I want to experience something like that. I feel free when I'm not wearing anything, and it's something I discovered after prom. I'm cozy right now." Tom glanced at his wife and said, "You are not just confident. You're quite relaxed, too." Allie paused for a moment, then smiled and replied to the ad. Monday, June 5th, 2017. Allie was waiting for Tom to come home after his shift at Sheetz, where he made sandwiches. Earning $9 an hour was a start, and they would need extra money, even if her school costs were covered. She was set to begin her waitressing job at Grady's Diner the next day. Tom entered the house and noticed that Allie was working in the kitchen, preparing a chicken dinner. She turned to him with a smile and said, "Chicken and rice for dinner," before returning to her task. He approached her from behind and playfully touched her. "Allie, come on, I'm trying to help with dinner," she said, lightly nudging him away. Tom continued to tease her gently. "Let's see how much you can get done with me here." Allie liked the fun challenge and took a wider stance, still focusing on preparing the chicken. After a few moments of playful touches, he gave her more attention, and she found it harder to concentrate on cooking. She kept mixing the rice and onion soup mix while smiling, excited that she was almost finished with dinner. "Ha ha! I finished! Now while it cooks, my amazing husband will give me some attention." He playfully nudged her, showing he wanted to be close, gently encouraging her to enjoy the moment. After a few minutes, they shared a lovely moment together. Allie then retrieved a towel and remarked, "Only someone truly in love would enjoy this feeling. I must really love you because this feels nice." She smiled at him, playfully dancing away, and said, "Grab the plates. Dinner is ready." She turned towards him, and Tom gazed at Allie, admiring the woman he loved so much. She grinned, loving the way he looked at her with affection. He finally said, "You are just so beautiful to me." She felt warm inside, completely enchanted by his words. An idea began to spark in her mind as she glanced over towards the living room, hoping her day would continue well and that her mom would not come home early. She set the plates on a small table in the living room and said, "Lay down next to the table." She grabbed a few large cushions to help support him and then gently laid him back down, starting to give him a good rub. He looked confused and asked, "What?" Once he felt better, she sat down beside him and began to cut up the chicken, feeding him a piece and taking one for herself too. He smiled and relaxed, enjoying the time spent with his loving wife. When only the rice was left, she stood up and moved the plates to the table as he took his seat next to her. She laughed and said, "I just had to be with you like that, and dinner was almost ready." She giggled and added, "Besides, it was fun, but I couldn't feed you rice while you were lying back like that. You would have ended up covered in it." He smiled back and said, "I was surprised I felt better. You really know how to take my energy." She smiled and replied, "And making you feel that way brings me joy. Never doubt how much I care for you." After dinner, Allie went to the bathroom to freshen up. When she came out wearing just some sporty shorts, she said, "Time to head to Patterson Art College." Tom asked, "Did you forget something to wear on top?" Allie shook her head and said, "Nope. Any place that allows men to go without shirts, I can too. And I choose to do the same." As they entered the art building, Allie wore only her sporty shorts. Tom held the door open for her, and they walked into the lobby, catching a few curious looks. As they walked down the hallway, she reminded a security guard that women had the right to be without shirts if men could, and there was no sign preventing men from entering without a shirt. They arrived at the art room about half an hour before class. Inside, an instructor at a desk looked up and laughed. She said, "You must be our new model, or someone just walked in to take off their clothes." Allie smiled and said, "Remember the agreement. I don't need to wear anything between classes or poses as long as I'm in this room." The instructor introduced herself as Angela Torres and remarked, "I see you're quite confident." Allie nodded and stretched, enjoying how it felt to be free. She said, It feels natural and nice. I love being myself and I'm not sorry for who I am. But remember, I am married and will not pose with any man or touch anyone inappropriately. I'm a loyal wife who wants to grow old with my husband." Angela nodded and assured her, "You will be posing alone tonight. I will make sure no male models are present when you pose." The first student to arrive was a woman in her 40s, about 5 feet tall, with a simple face and dark brown hair and a braid down her back. They looked at Allie, surprised, and asked, "No robe?" Angela replied, "She's not shy and likes to show off a bit. The agreement is that she doesn't need to wear a robe, and we get a beautiful new model. Our original model for tonight canceled, so we are lucky." The second person to arrive was an older man in his late 60s. He smiled, always pleased when the model turned out to be someone beautiful. When all 10 students were behind their easels, Angela introduced Allie. "Class, this is Allie, who will pose for us today." She pointed to an empty easel and said to Tom, "Part of the deal is that you also take part, Tom. You won't get credit, but when Allie poses, you'll draw your lovely wife." Tom smiled and took his place as Allie walked up onto the stage. Angela instructed her, "Allie, start with a simple walking pose with your arms slightly bent." Allie held the pose for 10 minutes wearing a warm smile. She clearly enjoyed it. Tom began by drawing Allie in charcoal before switching to a pencil. He did well in art, generally getting A grades, but not as well as Allie, who had won many awards. During a 2-minute break, Allie walked over to Tom to see his work. She enjoyed being close to him, and as the break was ending, she gave him a gentle kiss on the cheek before taking her next pose. Angela asked her to sit on the edge of the stage, like the thinker. Allie followed the same routine for each pose and repeated it for her second class. As she was leaving, Allie kissed Tom on the cheek and said, "Thank you for letting me follow my heart. I had an amazing time and loved every moment of it." Tuesday, June 6th, 2017. A thick envelope arrived for Allie. She noticed it was from Movie Max and called Tom over to take a look. Inside were 2 DVDs with a simple label that read, "Allie Calvert, Raw Video." A third disc was labeled, "Allie Calvert Highlights." Allie put one of the DVDs in the player and pressed play. The first DVD showed all her raw videos marked with a changing watermark and timestamp. The second was the same. The third DVD contained the program that was meant to be aired, which also had the watermark. There was a note on Movie Max letterhead. "Allie, as promised, here are the videos. These are not for sharing and are watermarked with extra security features to track any copies. They are for your personal use only and are not for public viewing. If you are interested in more work, we would like to discuss it with you. You could be fully body painted as a waitress at Wonderful Mexican Grill in Carmel. Additionally, there may be opportunities for background roles in upcoming projects." Tony Smith Movie Max. Allie showed Tom the note and he responded, "The first one sounds good to me, as long as I can be one of the customers. I need more information about the last 2 opportunities." They looked up Wonderful Weekly Woman. It was basically a typical streaming photo session. Tom shrugged and said, "So far, so good, but I need all the details since this might involve travel and other unexpected things." Wednesday, June 7th, 2017. Allie emailed Tony Smith back. "I spoke with my husband about the 3 opportunities. He really likes the first one as long as he can be one of my clients. Let's work on that one. Maybe turn it into a charity event." The Wonderful Weekly Woman sounds interesting, but I have many questions about what will happen. I don't mind being in front of the camera, but I would need a schedule and a clear idea of what is expected. Regarding the extra work, that would depend on personal situations, including timing and location. Allie Calvert, Friday, June 9th, 2017. Tony Smith replied to her email. "We will set up the body paint program in the next few weeks. We have already arranged for the same charity to receive donations if you can share your tips. The Weekly Wonderful Woman involves a video shoot that includes a still photographer. We would fly you to New York City for a 2-day shoot, and after that, you'd be the star of a formal dinner event, where you would wear your birthday suit. You would also meet TV stars and other celebrities and even dance with them. The extra work would be arranged on a case-by-case basis. We film in Los Angeles, New York, and Martins, Georgia." Tom Smith, Allie emailed back. "I'm looking forward to the body paint charity event. I only dance with my husband, so I will have to decline the wonderful weekly woman opportunity, especially since I would be without clothes. I have set boundaries in my marriage, believe it or not. Yes, I know it sounds funny coming from someone who enjoys being in front of the camera. Please keep me updated on any opportunities in Martins, Georgia. That is where I will go to college this fall. Allie Calvert. Saturday, June 10th, 2017. Amber arrived at 9 in the morning waving to Allie, who was enjoying the morning sunshine on the front porch and smiling. Allie smiled back at Amber when she noticed her friend. Tom came out, saw Amber, and went back inside to let everyone know she was there. Allie invited Amber into the living room to discuss their plans for the day. Amber asked, "So, remind me of the themes I'll be posing for again. I remember something about robes, so I brought my nice one and my comfy one. I have some work outfits and some sports clothes. I don't recall all the details, but I hope to cover most of it." After discussing the themes, Allie suggested that many of the photos would look better outdoors. Allie, Tom, Sandra, and Ann all stepped out of the house with their cameras. Amber thought for a moment and then said, "Well, I'm sure you can all take a few pictures while dressed. Then I will change out of my sports shorts so Ann can capture the one item at a time theme. After that, I will take off my underwear to explore the bottomless idea." Amber posed as she planned, going through each step until she was bottomless for 10 minutes for the walking and near a tree themes. She then removed her shirt, standing in just her bra for the one item off theme and the near a tree theme. Next, she took off her bra for various themes involving nudity. Amber felt comfortable moving around the house for posing since the road was far away and no one driving by would likely see anything. Amber said, "Being naked is fun." Tom looked at Allie and said, "Everyone around you ends up undressed." Amber shrugged and replied, "Well, the amateur night idea was mine, and that is how this all started. It's not all Allie's fault." Allie smiled and added, "I like it. Being naked is fun. It feels nice, and I'm lucky to have a husband who doesn't mind me being nude in public." As noon approached, they enjoyed a lunch of barbecued pork and then finished with two final themes. The first was Tom's open robe theme. Amber went to her bag and took out two robes, a red silk one and a pink fluffy one, posing at the bathroom door as if she had just stepped out of the bath, ready for a cozy evening. The second was Sandra's theme called Working Woman, where Amber posed in work-related situations. First, she pretended to be a hotel maid, posing with a scrub brush and some cleaner in the bathroom setting. Then she pretended to be a carpenter working with some scrap wood. As they were finishing up, a blue Mercedes pulled into the driveway. A woman with dark brown hair stepped out, looking upset, and walked straight toward Tom and Allie. She shouted, holding a bright yellow envelope, "You did this to me! I don't want a divorce! It was just a mistake!" Tom stepped in front of Allie protectively and said, "Are you Ben's wife? That makes it twice, actually." Madison shot back, "I was drunk. It was a mistake." Allie stepped forward, now that it was clear the woman wouldn't get aggressive, and said, "I was drunk too, but I left the room as soon as things seemed wrong." Madison replied, "But he was attractive and I just couldn't help myself." Allie responded, "This isn't the first time you've faced temptation. I get approached all the time, from little flirtations to bold offers. You are prettier than I am and face similar situations. Why do you make that choice?" The woman searched for answers but found none. She fell silent just as Ben arrived 2 minutes later, driving a Lexus. She glanced back at him, looking both sad and afraid. He stepped out of the car, assessed the situation, and said, "Madison, let it go. You caused this." He walked over and expressed his regret, purposefully ignoring Madison. "I'm sorry. She was served last night at 4. Madison began to cry, saying, "It was just that night. I don't want a divorce." Ben sighed and responded, "The marriage is over. I will always wonder where you are when you're not with me. I can't keep being a detective in my marriage forever." Madison sniffled and remained silent, clearly struggling with her emotions. Amber looked at Madison and asked, "You were unfaithful to this wonderful man. What were you thinking?" Madison replied, "I was drunk." Amber rolled her eyes and added, "And he was probably very attractive." Madison said nothing and walked away, getting into her car. She sat behind the wheel, cried for a moment, and then drove off. Ben said, "I just can't live like that. I've never been unfaithful in any relationship. If we stayed together, it would just slowly fall apart and we'd end up resenting each other. I had her served quietly, no public drama. Only family and a few close friends know what happened." Ben reached into his wallet and took out a $50 gift card, handing it to Allie, saying, "I won't let you refuse this. I saw you upset when you had to share bad news. Consider it a little bonus for loyalty." Ben turned to Tom and said, "You have a very lucky partner. She's adorable too. I'll stop there." Amber added, "She's quite attractive." Allie glanced at Amber and replied, "You're being cheeky," Amber teased, "and she's got a nice figure." Allie stuck her tongue out playfully at Amber. Ben sighed and said, "I wish Madison had been as faithful. It hurts." Amber looked at Ben thoughtfully as Allie thanked him for the gift card. Amber handed him a piece of paper and said, "Here's my number. Call me for coffee, and we can just be friends for now. I won't even kiss you until the divorce is finalized, but as someone who understands, I think we share something. We've both been wronged before." Amber stood confidently, allowing him to notice her. She continued, "You'll need to show you're worthy to be close to me, but I promise it'll be worth it." Ben asked, "Did you pose for them?" Amber nodded, explaining, "They're going to Martin's University, and I'm assisting with their photography projects for their majors." Ben thought about asking something obvious, but hesitated. Amber seemed to read his mind and smiled, saying, "The day you ask me to be with you is the day we can be intimate. Do you like what you see?" Ben nodded eagerly. "Good," she replied. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and said, "I'm totally worth it. Call me." Ben thought for a moment and replied, "Dinner Friday? I'll be in my new apartment by then." Amber smiled and nodded. "Just dinner. Once it's official, show me the papers and I will think about more." Amber smiled and left the thought open. There was no promise of anything, just possibilities. Ben drove away, his eyes showing a bit less sadness. Once he was gone, Amber said, "Yeah, I could consider it." Allie laughed. Monday, June 12th, 2017. In the afternoon, Allie got another email from Tom Smith of Movie Max. "I will reach out in the next week or two to arrange the body art event. I understand you chose not to join our weekly Wonderful Women. Many women are excited to dance with celebrities, even those who are married. I will keep you updated about extra roles in Martins, Georgia. Those are usually shorter projects with smaller budgets." Tom Smith Allie arrived at class wearing her sports shorts. She walked fully into the classroom before taking them off. As she entered the room, she confidently stood without her shorts, enjoying the moment. She smiled and stretched, glancing at Tom and saying, "This feels great." When everyone settled, Angela asked Allie if she was willing to try some more interesting poses. Allie smiled and agreed. Her first pose was leaning back at the edge of the stage with her legs slightly apart. She felt confident and free, enjoying the attention while knowing she was not pushing any limits. Allie felt happy with her choice. She had clear boundaries and life was good. Saturday, June 17th, 2017, Allie emailed Tom Smith. "I'm looking forward to updates on the Waitress production. Let me know the time and if it's at the Carmel location of Wonderful Mexican Grill. About dancing with a celebrity? I'm different from most women. My husband sees and approves all my work. Being honest with him has let me do projects I love without issues. I plan to spend my life with my Tom. I will send my contact details for extra roles once we settle in Martins, Georgia. Allie Calvert." Later that afternoon, Allie lay on her husband's chest and sighed. "Excited for tonight?" Tom smiled. "Kind of. A bit nervous, too. I hope you win." Allie said, "Me too for both." Tom squeezed her shoulder. Allie asked, "Be specific. Do I perform dances, and if so, how far do you want me to go?" Tom thought for a moment. "What do you want?" Allie said, "Honestly, I want to dance." Tom replied, "You might get touched." Allie nodded. "I wouldn't let it get too close." Tom said, "The idea excites you." Allie nodded. "Yes, and I would love the chance to earn some money. It's not just about the attention. I'm not a fan of it, but being wanted makes me feel better about myself." Amber mentioned she earned $300, and she received fewer offers than many other women. Tom said, "The idea of other guys touching you makes me feel uneasy. It wouldn't hurt as much as if you were with them, but it still bothers me." Allie replied, "Then it's settled. I won't do those special dances. Are you still okay with the performance?" Tom nodded. "That part excites me too. I love showing you off." Allie kissed him and pointed at his heart, saying, "I have your heart, and I will always keep it. I will not do those special dances tonight." Tom smiled. "I love you. Two things must stay on." Allie asked, "What are they?" Tom said, "Your engagement and wedding rings." Allie eagerly nodded. She said, "I love you, Tom. I promise I will never hurt you. We need to talk about these things." Tom asked, "You would really enjoy it?" Allie nodded. "It's about the dance, not the touching. It's about feeling wanted. I wouldn't let them linger, but yes. Women like to feel desired, and I see it as harmless fun. You see it differently. I don't want to lose you, so I won't do those dances. I will never hurt you intentionally." Tom smiled. "Thank you." Allie said, "I love you. Now, why don't we celebrate our agreement in the bedroom? I'll perform on stage, you get to show me off, and I won't do the special dances." Tom asked, "What's your stage name?" Allie laughed. "Alley Cat, of course." Tom walked into Golden Bozo's with his wife, who was wearing purple shorts and a pink tank top. Allie spoke to the man at the entrance, who nodded and said, "You can enter for free," pointing towards a door at the back of the bar. "You can get ready through the right side and then up the stairs. There's a changing area at the top." The man pointed to a chair 3/4 of the way down the stage. It had a sign that said VIP. He handed Tom a red wristband and said, "This marks you as a VIP. Drinks are half price and you can sit in any of the seats with red backs. This one has the best view." Tom sat down waiting for the show to begin, looking around. A regular dancer was on stage. He sighed. She was pretty, but not quite his type. At 5 until 8 that evening, the MC stepped on stage and announced, "Good evening, welcome to Golden Bozo's Amateur Night. In 5 minutes we will start our amateur contest. There is one important rule. If you do anything but clap and cheer for our contestants, you will be asked to leave. Our performers are here to entertain you. They are brave to show themselves, so please be kind." The MC's voice boomed with enthusiasm as the first contestant, a woman using the stage name Cara Lotta, stepped out. She was around 40, with shoulder-length brown hair framing a graceful, still youthful face that hinted at her earlier days in the spotlight. As the song "I Want to Kiss You All Over" began, Cara walked down the stage confidently, dressed in a sleek red V-neck dress. Her initial steps were a bit stiff, but as the crowd cheered, she relaxed into a more fluid rhythm, moving gracefully with the beat and even twirling a few times around the pole at the end of the runway. Encouraged by the applause, she continued her routine, clearly enjoying the supportive energy of the audience. She blew a kiss to her husband, who cheered loudly as she finished her performance. Next up, the MC announced, "And now, presenting Alley Cat." Tom cheered with excitement as his wife, Allie, entered to Van Halen's Pound Cake. She sported loose shorts and a t-shirt over a bright bikini and brought an upbeat, fun energy to the stage, moving with light, quick steps to the end and then back. Allie threw in a playful cartwheel, landing near Tom, where she pulled off her loose t-shirt and playfully tossed it to him. With a cheerful smile, she twirled around the stage, matching the beat of the song, and then slid off her shorts, tossing them to Tom as well. Her routine continued with lively moves, like cartwheels and playful rolls, bringing her back in front of Tom, where she invited him to untie part of her top. Tom, laughing, gave a gentle tug, and Allie spun back with a bright smile. She finished her act with a final handstand, then rolled to her feet, beaming as she exited the stage to the sound of cheers and applause. Allie's performance on stage came to a close as she shared a playful moment with Tom, then exited with a smile. The show continued with several more contestants following her, and the audience cheered each one on. When it was all over, the top prizes went to the professionals. Allie returned to Tom, still energized from the night, and sat with him, clearly enjoying the lively atmosphere and sharing a warm moment. As they prepared to leave, Allie, still basking in the thrill of the event, walked out with Tom by her side. She enjoyed the freedom of the evening, radiating confidence and joy. Tom looked at her, smiling. "You looked like you had a great time." Allie beamed back. "It was amazing, such a rush. I'm already thinking about doing this again sometime." Tom chuckled and gave her a hug. "I can't wait to be there with you." Later that night, back at home, Allie rested against Tom, happily reflecting on the evening. After a comfortable silence, she sighed and asked softly, "We're still good, right?" Tom looked at her, puzzled. "Of course. What do you mean?" Allie thought for a moment. "I've changed a lot since we got together. I'm not quite the same person I was when we got married. I feel freer, but I want to make sure we're still on the same page." Tom gave her a gentle squeeze. "I'm happy for you, and I'm good with all of it. You found things you enjoy, and it's been wonderful to watch you grow. I trust you, and as long as we're open with each other, I'm with you all the way." Allie smiled, relieved. "I'm so glad. It's a journey, and I'm glad you're here with me." Tom held her close, reassuring her. "We're more than good, Allie. We're solid." They lay there quietly, grateful for each other and feeling closer than ever. Hey, everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.